of heat in here, isn't it? Or is it me?
It was hot when I first came there.
Gail?
Should probably do it while we do a presentation. James.
Good evening. We'll get started. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to the regular Town Council meeting for Monday, August 19th, 2013. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Dolores, can you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And the attendance?
Counselor Drake?
Here.
Counselor Hurley?
Here.
Counselor Kotkin?
Here.
Counselor McAllister?
Here.
Counselor Manusos?
Here.
Counselor Montanari?
Here.
Counselor Roberts?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Consol?
Present.
And Chairperson Hemmon.
Here.
Thank you.
Our first item is a proclamation on,
I have these.
okay,
Yeah.
that's right.
If I may, Mayor, if I may, I'm going to add two items to the agenda this evening. One is the approval of the Community Development Block Grant Small Cities Housing Rehabilitation Loan Agreement between the town and the Metropolitan District Employees Credit Union for 579 Ridge Road. And second, approval of an agreement between the town of Weathersfield and the Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security for a Weathersfield Multiple Generator Installation Grant. Total project award is $476,700. Federal share is $357,525. Town share is $119,175. Locations for replacement generators are Community Center, 3 fire stations, Physical Services, Nature Center, Ambulance Facility, and Town Hall.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The first item we have is a proclamation tonight for texting and no texting while driving. And I'd like to read that for you. Whereas texting has become the way many people communicate today, which means some people are doing it at the worst possible time while driving. And whereas texting while driving is involved in over 100,000 motor vehicle crashes each year, often causing injuries and deaths, and whereas those who text while driving are 23 times more likely to be involved in some type of safety critical event as compared to those drivers who don't text while they drive, and whereas in 2009, AT&T launched the public awareness campaign, quote, "It Can Wait," unquote, to educate the public about the dangers of texting while driving by encouraging consumers to take the personal pledge not to text while driving. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the town of Weathersfield designates September 19th, 2013 as No Texting While Driving Day to focus attention on the dangers of texting while driving. And be it further proclaimed that members of the Weathersfield Town Council have taken the personal pledge not to text and drive, support efforts to raise the public awareness about dangers of texting while driving, and encourage others to take the pledge not to text and drive. In witness whereof, by the authority vested in me as mayor, I hereinto set my hand and cause the seal of the town of Weathersfield to be affixed this 19th day of August, 2013. Next, we will hear from Mr. Gillespie. Will do the economic development report next.
Actually,
Is Peter?
Peter is not here.
Is Denise here?
Denise, I thought was going to do it. Maybe they changed it.
Rayan, do you want to go through some of the highlights for us?
No.
I just need a minute to open it. The chairman of EDIC was supposed to step in. Peter's on vacation, and Denise had a previous family event,
Okay.
and the chairman at the last minute was unable to come. So I'm going to do this cold. I'm going to be candid. The recent projects are that the Porter and Chester building at 125 Silas Dean Highway has been converted to 6-unit retail building and is complete. Family Dollar recently opened. The renovation of the office building at 1290 Silas Dean Highway is near completion. Demolition of a portion of the former Northeast Utilities property at Cumberland Avenue is ready to start the school project there. The former space that was, and I know I'm going to say this wrong, the Asian Bistro on the Berlin Turnpike has been renovated to accommodate space for young pharmaceuticals. There's an elevator at Putnam Park Office Building for the Art Institute of Connecticut. And we have a new salon, 2 new yogurt places, a Pizza Hut, consignments, a World Buffet, Froyo World, and then a World Buffet, and then some more medical space. The New Life Christian Fellowship opened at 1155 Silas Dean Highway. Hartford Hospital is doing an addition at their medical building at 1260 Silas Dean Highway. And unfortunately, several businesses have closed over the past few months, including Wells Tavern, Wiggles and Giggles, and Carmen Anthony's Restaurant. Moving on to P&Z updates, the commission's completed the plan of conservation and development, and Rich Roberts was elected chair at their last meeting. EDIC elected Mark Trahan as chair and Vincent Fabi as vice chair. A facade loan was approved for repainting the American Legion building on Main Street. And unfortunately, we did not get the STEEP funds for the facade program that we applied for. Tourism, the commission's completing the planning process for the revitalization and reuse of the Masonic Home and the underutilized businesses at Comstock. And Harvard Foundation for Public Giving gave the town $17,500 to assist in the funding of the Heritage Interpretive Trail. That funding can only be used that's for the planning. Once we find funding to actually do the signs, then they'll release the planning funds. And those are the interpretive signs that were part of, explaining the history of town and part of the original Preserve America plan. And we've applied for $35,000 to Connecticut Humanities Council to in fact do those signs. That's it in a nutshell, and I can take questions that you have and get you answers.
Do counselors have any questions for Rayanne to check with Denise?
Rayanne, if you don't mind, if you can check to see what the status is on Carmen Anthony's. There's been some interest, I know, from some groups. If she can get back to us.
Yeah, I will do that. I know from, because of the tax issue, I know that there was purportedly a buyer in the wings, so, or a refinance of that. So, yeah, I will get back to you on that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Rayanne.
Thanks.
Thanks for stepping in. Next, I just wanted to make an announcement. The town, again, has lost a very faithful volunteer, and we're so sorry that this has happened. Paul Corshane recently passed away, and he's been a vital part of this community through many years on the Historical District Commission, as well as many other committees and commissions around the town. There will be a memorial service held for him on August 30th at 1 p.m. at the Webb Barn. And he has been his presence will be missed. It's been a tough couple of weeks with Dr. Sale, just a few weeks before that. Okay, next item is the tree trimming report from Connecticut Light and Power.
Yes, is Jack and his group. Jack Arcega with CLMP and his,
Yes, David Goodson from our vegetation management
Okay.
Department will be presenting.
Okay.
The manager then.
Can I ask them to stay for?
Before you begin, I just want to, while you're speaking, I'd like you to look at that picture while you're talking to the people, so you can explain that. Thank you.
And I would make a request also that, that CLMP please stay for public comments so that they can hear the input of our public who are here to speak tonight.
Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to note for the record that Councilor Cott can move to the back of the room for this discussion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Dave Goodson. I'm the manager of vegetation management for Connecticut Light and Power. And I've got a few words that I'd like to say this evening before we open it up to some questions from you. First of all, the question most people have right up front is, why do we do vegetation management? Why do we trim trees? And some very simple answers. First of all, it's for safety, for the public, for the utility workers that work on the lines, also for the visual and physical access that's necessary for us to provide maintenance, and also for in emergency situations, we certainly need to be able to see the wires to be able to find and fix problems, to prevent damage to some very expensive equipment that's up in the air, and lastly, for the reliability of our electric system. We want your lights to stay on. And certainly over the last couple of years, since the major storms, there's been a growing interest in vegetation management and tree work. We've had several dockets with our regulator, and our budget has doubled so that we can do more so that your lights do stay on. I handed out a couple of things there. One is kind of a bunch of talking points that we put together last year. And this is a piece that we use when we take on the road, so to speak. Before we perform any maintenance work in town, we always schedule a meeting with town leadership and the tree warden, and that is the handout we use there. There's also a map that I'll use to make a couple of more points. I know one of the questions was, who does this work? All of this work is performed by professional line clearance contractors who have employees that are trained in this very specifics work that goes into line clearance. Clearly there's a lot of danger there with electricity and cutting instruments, working at heights, so they're trained in that. All of those crews are under the direction of our state certified arborist. In this case, he's in the audience tonight. His name is Barry Croak, and he works with the town tree warden on any issues that arise. So protecting the trees and wires is foremost our reason for being there. If you look at the map that's provided there, a couple of talking points about how our electric system is laid out in Weathersfield. You'll see the area around the green and some lines that are highlighted in pink. That pink line is what we call our circuit backbone, and that's fed out of a substation that comes out of South Meadow in Hartford. The electric system, if you think of it like a tree, it starts at the roots and branches out from there. From the roots or our substation comes the trunk, and then the branches and the individual customers. Your electric meter is more like the leaves at the end of the branches. The backbone, or the trunk, is the support for the entire electric system. It is the backbone of our grid. If it goes out, everybody on the tree goes out. And in this case, for this particular circuit, it's called the 128 circuit, there's just a little over 2,000 customers. So an outage by any cause, be it a tree, a squirrel, lightning, some other type of damage on that backbone that's highlighted there, will take the power out to all of those branch lines or laterals that are fed off of that backbone. We have two types of tree maintenance that we do. One is called our routine trimming, which is performed along the lateral lines. That's where we get approximately clearance area of 8 feet to the side, 10 feet below, and 15 feet over the overhead electric wires. On the backbone, our goal is to remove all overhanging limbs. And the point here is, without overhang, we have a much more reliable electric system, both in blue sky days like we had today, but also in storms like we've witnessed in the past couple of years. The trees in question on the green, our recommendation is there's approximately 5 or 6 trees that we believe, they obviously no longer look like trees because of their shape, and we recommend that those trees be removed, and we will put a replacement tree in their place. And this gets into part of our program that we call Right Tree, Right Place. And there's a right place for a tree and there's a wrong place for a tree. A tree that wants to be 80 feet tall but is planted close to an electric line can't ever look like a tree when it's planted too close. If they're planted far enough away, then they can maintain that shape. If you look on the green, most of those trees are what we would call open grown. They want to be shaped like a giant gumdrop. Placed too close to our wires, they can't look like a gumdrop because we need to protect our facilities so that the electricity stays on and we have a safe electric system. So that's my few opening remarks. I hope you have a few questions.
Do councilors have questions? Yes, Councilor Hurley?
Yeah, it seems like on some of the trees, and we've had many complaints from residents that, and I'm sure all the councilors drove around, that they went overboard a little bit. You see some trees that they did some cutting on, but some seem like they went way overboard. Don't they have some discretion when they're cutting the trees, or they have to exactly cut back the 15 feet or whatever?
The contractors we hire are instructed to get the clearance, but there's also some discretion they use. But what we find is particularly on older mature trees, that if, let's just say my arm is the tree limb, and this is where we would normally cut it off because that would get us clearance. These are the leaves. Well, if we cut it off here, there's nothing left but a stub. And the standards that we work to, that are described by the International Society of Arboriculture, requires us to go back to the next main lead because that stub will just decay. It's never going to grow back to the way it was.
Okay, now, what can CLP do for us for the destruction of some of like the 100-year-old trees? Is there some type of plantings they can do, or?
We have a proposal where, like on the town green, we will remove those trees in whole and put replacement trees in their place. But again, right tree, right place is what we want to do. And we'll work with the tree warden to pick out a species that's compatible. If it's close to the road, close to our conductors, we want something that's going to be relatively small at its maturity. If it's can be put further away from the road, it can be a very large tree.
Councilor Drake and the Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, the 5 trees you're talking about removing, is that based on a result, everybody moaning and groaning, or were you planning on doing that ahead of time? I kind of assume it was based on a result.
It's based on the result.
Okay, and what would you put in there in terms of size? I mean, you're talking about species, but are these going to be substantial trees, or are they going to be $200 trees? I guess I'm trying to say. I mean, how far would you go?
In terms of size, I think we'd probably travel down the road to somebody like Mullane's and see what they have in their nursery for size. We're not going to take a tree out this big and replace it with a tree that big. It'll be something that's professionally grown, balled and burlapped, probably up to from 2 to 4 inches caliper.
I think a lot of this could have been avoided. I know you guys are trying to do your job, what you got to do. If someone at the beginning had said, I think we got to take 5 out, then we could have had some type of a discussion ahead of time with the people involved and made a determination or not. It's too bad it got to this point, but I know you have to do what you got to do, but we'll come up with some type of an answer. So.
Deputy Mayor?
If I may, I have some comments, then I'll get to some questions. But a few things first. On your website, I printed off It tells about why you trim trees, and I think it's something similar to what,
Yep.
to what you gave us. But on page 2, there was something called ETT, or enhanced tree trimming.
Correct.
And while you do enhanced tree trimming, and perhaps you can show that picture I gave you to the audience just for a moment on some of the tree trimming that was done.
Yep.
And this was done, that, if you want to pass that around, and I have a copy here also. For those of you that haven't seen this was done over at Sacred Heart Church. And I spoke to the priest at Sacred Heart Church, and right now, you've put the church garage and the church hall in danger. If those trees ever fall, the way they're cut right now, are gonna fall on their buildings. So they're gonna avoid the power lines, but they'll fall on the buildings. And I just question, if we didn't have CLMP come here tonight, would you have gone back and done anything with these trees, or would they stay like that? That's my first question.
If they had requested they be removed, we would remove them.
Okay, and then, but in your statement here, it says, "The company contractor shall inform property owners and right-of-way abutters with homes and buildings located within 200 feet of the right-of-way or in their property line at the edge of the right-of-way, that they would be given at least 48 hours' notice, and if they're not home, that they would at least get a tag on their door or a phone call by a company representative to notify them about that." Every person that I've gotten a complaint from never heard from CLMP.
Okay. There's a little mix-up there. First of all, in reference to the 48-hour notice, that is in terms of what we call our off-road right-of-way program.
Okay,
This is for lines that go cross-country.
correct. No, I
For
understand.
lines that are along the road, wherever we do the enhanced type of trimming, we get consent from the abutting property owner. So that is a door-to-door request for consent from the owner of the trees.
Okay, but there's also a statement in here that you would contact the private property owner prior to cutting any trees on their property,
That's correct.
and that was not done here.
That was not done with the church?
No, and it wasn't done with the 7 emails I received from people that you went on their property and cut trees without getting their consent. They were never notified.
I'll definitely have to check into that. If you give me the property addresses, I'll look
I'll,
into that immediately.
and the other thing is, are you familiar with the Connecticut Tree Protection Association's position statement on exceptions to the arborist law?
Yes, sir, I was once president of the CTPA.
So, reading through this, and I was going to read every page, but I don't want to bore the audience, but a couple of things in here, and I'll get to it during council comments, but it says, one thing I just want to read: "A reasonably skilled but inadequately trained tree worker may succeed in the application of basic arboricultural techniques. However, that does not mean that they have full understanding of the consequences of their actions. Inappropriate tree work done solely to solve a current need can cause great harm down the road," which you guys have already caused great harm. "In these situations, previously sound and healthy trees can become hazardous, and trees with unrecognized problems can go untreated." My issue is, I spoke to some of the tree people. I went around and I saw them cutting some trees, and I asked them. And one guy's name was Carl, another guy's name was Dave. They wouldn't give me their last names. I didn't tell them who I was. And all they said was they were hired to cut back or rip back from the power line so we wouldn't lose power. And I said, "Would you want that tree in your backyard?" And the guy says, "I don't live here. I live in New York. I don't really care." That's not an attitude I like for this town, I have to tell you. I think you guys failed terribly. And you've caused irreversible damage to this town for years to come. I'll have saved my other comments for later. Thank you.
Other counselors have comments? Counselor Roberts?
Yes, I understand the need for tree trimming, and a few years ago when, I think it was Asplund was around, they did a fabulous job. These people came in and they were like hired guns, and I didn't get the feeling that there was any supervision at all. It seemed to be the 2 trucks, or 2 or 3 with the crew. Some of the crew, English wasn't their primary language, so I think they had difficulty when people went to talk to them. In the area I live, which is near Highcrest School, but I don't live on that street, but in that area, some neighbors said that they weren't going to give permission, so, you know, you have a tree here that's really scalped and looks like the ones on the Broad Street Green, and then the next house, you have trees in the lines because the neighbor said they weren't going to give the permission, and the crew didn't really seem to know what you do in that situation. Then in the same area, you have the trees that are cut high, and then you have trees that are interspersed with wires going all the way over into the middle of the road. And when I asked about those, I was told that was a telephone line, and it doesn't really matter because they were only there for electric. But the whole way it's turned out in multiple parts of town is horrific. And I don't really think, unless we get trees that you can purchase that are 100 feet tall, this is going to take years. It's going to be worse than when the tornado came through and wiped out sections of town. I don't think that was CLMP's intent, but I think that's the effect. And, it seems to be that there were 2 or 3 companies in town working in different parts of town. I don't know if there was any coordination. I never saw anybody that looked like they had a town truck or a town car. And I think these people just went wild and went 8 feet back and 15 feet up. And, if there was a branch that was 15 and a half feet up that maybe should have come down, that was left there. The whole thing was just helter-skelter. And I understand why people are upset, because it's just a total mishmash.
I'm not sure I heard a question in there, but I'll answer what I think I heard. The first one being in regards to the supervision and the crews. Yes, many of our crews do not have English as their native language, and that's the workforce we have today. These crews are supervised. Each crew reports to a general foreman, and also is under the direction of our company arborist. In terms of the hodgepodge of work that's out there, that is oftentimes a result of the trees that are there today that have been there for tens, some of them more than 100 years, in a condition less than desirable. A lot of old trees in town. This is a really tough town to do tree work in because of the proximity of the trees to the wires. But we have to work within the constraints of Connecticut law. Connecticut law requires us to get consent for trees on private property. Some people will say, yes, go do it. Others will say, no, don't. If they say don't, we don't. So that's why you see in some locations trees that are either too close today because they've been growing that way for years, or they'll be that way in the future. Unfortunately, what that results in for us is a weak link in the chain of reliability. Those trees that are not pruned adequately will be a risk to our electric system and to all of our customers. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there wasn't really a question in there. It was sort of more of a statement. But it just seems like for such a large project that there should have been some kind of overall coordination. I never saw anyone with a CLMP truck, and I've driven around to different parts of town. I never saw one CLMP truck with any crew. As I said, I saw 2 or 3 different companies. Sometimes it looked like they left one truck with a guy that had nothing to do with the trimming, but was just sitting there for a while. I don't know if it was lunch or what, and the other trucks were gone. It's just, and there was no common sense. If you're having a tree that's cut back 15 feet up in the air, and then the tree next to it is then sticking all the way out in the road, and nothing's cut because maybe it's a telephone wire. I mean, aesthetically, it looks, I can give you streets that you should drive down, and you'd be like appalled.
Yeah, I drove around town today, and I'll say
Try High Crest.
that there are very large trees with lines built right through the center of the tree, and not the best situation. But the alternative is, in those situations, to take those trees down.
Well, I would argue that the alternative would have been to have better planning at the beginning and better coordination. And if I asked for a show of hands of how many people here got a notice from CLMP, where you're going to have the trees on your property touched, I bet you there wouldn't be a lot of hands going up, because I haven't heard anyone saying, oh, yes, I gave permission. All I'm hearing throughout town is, what the hell happened, basically. 1 minute we had trees, we came home and the trees were gone. So if you're doing this in other towns, I would really strongly suggest better coordination.
Well, we have records of all our consent, so I will check those consent records with the records you provide for those addresses where we did not get consent.
Counselor Manousis, then Deputy Mayor.
So unfortunately, the character of the town has now been changed for the next generation. I guess my question would be, how do we prevent this in the future? Is there any better communication we can have, or more sensitivity from your subcontractors and crews, knowing their surroundings, especially in an old town like Weathersfield?
I think the answer is good communication. When we come to town, we specifically have meetings with the town leadership to talk about what our plan is and where we will be doing all of this work, and lay it out just like we did on the map that you see there. We provide our work specifications so that it's not a surprise about what we will be doing when we come to town. So anybody that's interested, the more dialogue, the better. And like I said, for individual property owners that have trees on their property, we do notify them, and if for things like tree removals or heavy cutting, we do get consent, signed consent.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Roberts touched on something, and so did Councilor Manousis. You said you worked with town officials before this took place.
Yes.
Which town officials did you work with?
The tree warden for sure, and I was not here, but a couple of fellows that are here were.
We met with the,
They met with me.
town manager.
Town manager.
Yep.
And who other besides the town manager?
Director of Public Works, I believe, was there as well.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with everyone else that was in the room yet, off the top of my head. But,
Me, you, and Sally.
Okay. So, Mike, you were there also?
Yes.
Okay. So when this plan was put together, and you came up with a cutting plan, that was given to you?
Yes, and
Or
we
to
put
the-
it, we sent it out in the manager report that CLMP would be in town doing their enhanced tree trimming program, and that they were communicating with the tree warden on the overall program.
Correct, but you didn't go into any detail of how they were going to go about trimming the trees or cutting them in half. Is
Well,
that correct?
because they didn't say they were gonna cut them in half, we said they were gonna do the enhanced tree trimming, which required total clearance from the wires on that side of the tree.
Understand, but when this started, were any town officials, did any town officials go out to see the type of work they were doing in the infancy stages?
Yes, I believe that the tree warden was familiar with what they were doing.
So the tree warden in this town approved that type of cutting of the trees? I find that hard to believe.
Well, under the Connecticut statutes, the CLMP has a permit to do this work in town. When there were issues related to the extent to which the tree trimming was being done and some of the issues, we asked them to stop and come to this meeting. They didn't come to us and say, you know what, we're going to butcher 30 trees in town. That wasn't the message. And again, this was something that the state is requiring them to do. Their representation to us as town officials was, we have a program approved by an arborist, we work with your arborist, we're going to do what we have to do with the greatest care possible. And that was the message we got, and that's the message we relayed to the community. Unfortunately, some of their crews may not have been supervised as effectively as CLMP would have liked, which has led us to this situation, and here we are.
I understand. Then I'll end with a comment. The lack of communication between what took place with CLMP and our town officials to the town council, because I know I did see that in your town management report that they were trimming trees. And until I started getting calls, I mean, trimming a tree and doing this, to me, is not trimming a tree. That's butchering a tree. So then it stopped because neighbors started complaining. What I'm saying is there was a communication breakdown, I believe, with the town officials and our council itself on this, because this should have stopped a long time ago.
Any other council
Just one
comments?
quick
Councilor
question.
Montanari?
Thanks, Donna. You talked about the consent agreement for private residences. Is there a consent component for public property?
The care and control of all public trees is either within the jurisdiction of the town tree warden for municipal trees, or for the Department of Transportation for trees on state roads.
Okay, so then in the case of like the Broad Street Green, which is
Public
town property, public property, municipality, would it be normal practice to have your arborist and the town arborist actually go to the site and review the plan prior to cutting?
Sometimes they will do that, yes.
Did
but
do
not
you know
always.
if you may not know the answer to this, but did that happen in this case?
I don't know.
Okay, is that something we could find out if it did happen, just so we could circle back? Because we've stopped the cutting, correct?
Yes.
So before we commence, sounds like it might be sensible to have those arborists meet with this tree company before another branch is cut to, I guess, pursue that. We do have some consent capacity, if I hear what you're saying.
That's correct.
Okay, and that sounds like that might have just been overlooked in this case.
I'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Roberts?
Yeah, and just going forward with other communities, I mean, if you, regardless of if there's miscommunications or whatever, if you come to something that's either historic or like the focal point of the community, like the Broad Street Green, I think CL&P and the company, the tree trimming companies really need to pay special attention to that, because the Broad Street Green is the focal point in town. We have many activities there throughout the year. We have lots of, bands come, carnivals, the Corn Fest, and really it's in bad shape. So I think you need to put somewhere in your policy or your plans that for certain kinds of historic or focal points in the community that really all the dots needed to be, all the I's needed to be dotted and the T's needed to be crossed.
Any other councils?
Just one last point on it. Well, with respect, you mentioned, I think, 5 trees that are going to be planted?
That's just an approximate number.
And that's based on the end result of the work that was done at the green? Or
Yes, I'm
more broadly through the town?
specifically talking about the green.
Okay, and is there any capacity to examine that for perhaps a more robust contribution with respect to tree planting? If there's apparently, obviously, a lot of, I think that
And
might be another.
Our tree planting requirement is that we will get the trees and put them in the ground as long as the town or some organization will agree to maintain them going forward. That's the.
I assume that's our normal practice, Mike, with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be good to look at that a little bit more, because I think, the green got devastated, obviously, in the tornado, so it started weakened, and now we've weakened it some more, which I understand your motivations, but it sounds like we have some work to do before we go back in there.
And as I said, there are a lot of very mature trees in town. It's a very tough balance for us to strike between people's desire for reliable electric service and that aesthetic. The best way I can describe it to folks is it may sound silly and simplistic, but take a head of broccoli and take some barbecue skewers and stick those into the head of broccoli, and then say, okay, those are the conductors, now we need to trim around them. And you'll discover it's not easy to do, and that's the job we're trying to do out there, especially with the trees that are here that are quite mature.
Counselor Drake?
Yeah, Don, assuming we're going to continue this process on the green, and I do see your specifications, maybe we need to, I don't know, Jeff, maybe we got to get Mike together, tree warden, maybe some people that live down this area, maybe put a little group together and maybe come up with some specific guidance for you in that particular area. I mean, it's not that big of an area. You should be able to like get a group together, spend a little time, and walk through this and put some specific guidance together. I know you have specifications, but we walk through and say, this is what we want to do.
Right.
And maybe the town, if we have to enhance something, we could take a look at it. But I think we need to get the people who really, I guess, that really live in that
Right,
area.
The people that are passionate about it. If they
That's
come out,
exactly. The people are passionate.
better-
Let's
that'll
give
be a
them,
better
use
result.
some guidance, so whatever we can do, it doesn't get screwed up more, we can try to fix what we gotta do, and let's get a group together to do that. I think that's probably the best answer.
We'll start with working through the Village Improvement Association.
Yeah, and we can do that probably pretty quick. Do we need that around the whole town? I don't know, because I know there's been a little complaining, but not a lot, but we can take a look at that as we go forward. But let's get this Broad Street Green straightened out as fast as we can.
It should be a town-wide issue. Ridge Road is no better, and so is Highcrest area.
Counselor Roberts?
Just a couple of follow-up questions. Did I hear you say there was a foreman out on the scene from CLNP?
Yes, he's here tonight.
Okay. Did he circulate, or, I'm just asking because I never saw a truck
Yeah,
that,
his job covers the greater Hartford area, and he circles from town to town. Spent time in Weathersfield with these crews.
okay, because, if you met with the town leadership or the town staff, I don't want them taking the hit that they didn't communicate with us if the expectation was that there'd be an on-site supervisor from CLNP who actually wasn't there much or only drove through.
Don't let me misunderstand. He's not on site. He's not there 40 hours a week with these crews in this town. He circulates through Weathersfield and several other towns in the greater Hartford area where we're also doing work.
Okay, well, that could be a problem because I think the supervision needs to be increased. And the other thing is if there's lines that are actually, tree limbs actually in the wires, who controls those? The owner of the tree, or if they're actually in the wires, the CLMP, because they're a hazard?
If the state law allows CLNP, if there are limbs touching the conductor, the law allows us to prune those limbs. And that was a law that just was passed this past summer.
Mm-hmm.
It allows us to prune or remove limbs that are in contact with our conductors, or they use the term burning. But on those poles that are out there, you've also got telephone and cable TV conductors that are below ours. We do not maintain those conductors. That's the responsibility of phone and cable TV. So on any given road, you may be looking at trees and wires. They may not be CLMPs.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. I would appreciate if you could stay through public comments so that you can hear comments from the public. Next item is under public comment. We have 4 hearing items. We will start with these. The hearing on the resolution concerning an application to the state of Connecticut to obtain local capital improvement LoCIP funds for milling and paving of various streets. B is the hearing on the resolution concerning an application to the state of Connecticut to obtain local capital improvement LoCIP funds to reconstruct and pave Fairlane Drive between Grizzle Road and Fox Hill Road. Item C is hearing on resolution concerning a fair housing policy to ensure equal opportunity for all persons. And the last hearing is on a resolution recommending the acceptance of an urban action grant of $500,000 from the state of Connecticut and authorization for the town manager to effectuate said award. Are there members of the public wishing to speak on any of these 4 hearing items? Any of the public wishing to speak on any of these 4 hearing items? Yes, sir.
I don't think many people heard it.
Oh, nasty.
Steve Randall, 35 Beverly Road. I can't help myself against it in the trees. I think
For trees, you have to hold off, Mr. Randall.
I'll wait till the end.
Okay, only you can
He's
speak
fine.
under
I
public comment, but,
I misunderstood you, I got it now.
okay.
Okay, so first I'm going to do the easy one. I hope you all approve, because I'm sure in favor of it, the Parks and Rec B4A. Am I permitted to
Again,
say
Mr.
that?
Mr. Randall, these 4 hearing items are number 1, A, B,
Okay.
C, and D.
Well, that I can understand.
Okay, that's what we're speaking to now, so if you do.
So is, just to make it complicated then, is B1F I can comment on?
No.
No, under regular public comment, you
Okay, when can I
can't.
comment on these?
As soon as we're done with the hearing items.
So after you approve them, I can comment?
No, we're going to have any comment on these 4 hearing items, and then we'll go into regular public comment. At that point, you could speak to any item on the agenda.
I'm learning.
Okay?
The audience out in the TV land is learning much as
Okay. So any of these 4 items, the 2 items on LoCIP funding, or the item on the fair housing policy, or the Urban Action Grant for $500,000. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on any of those 4 hearing items? Mr. Rue?
Good evening, George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. I'd like to comment on all of them as long as I'm here. I don't want to have to come back. Can I do that? Is that okay?
Sure. On the 4, yes.
Yeah, the 4 items.
Yep.
On the first one, on the first 2, my only counsel is do it wisely. I'm not against it. I don't know enough about all of the details. But think about what it is you're doing and think about what the roads, what has to be done on the roads. The one thing I would like to comment on is the repeated use of the word local capital improvement program. And I see that again and again and again, and I see big sums of money coming up here. But there's this blighted piece of property near where I live that doesn't seem to be able to get a nickel or a dime. I would suggest that you look at the priorities that you spend your money on. All right, on the other 2 items, I have a question more or less on item C. Were there any significant changes to that since the last time it was done? Because it says it has to be done annually. Is it pretty much the same as before?
We changed a name in all of these to be consistent with the current staff.
All right, but there was no weakening or strengthening of
No.
what the requirements are?
No, we've taken it right from HUD.
Okay, all right. In that case, I would strongly support that. I really wouldn't want that weakened in any way, shape, or form. I think that's a very vital part of our democratic society and the diversity that our country has and really needs, okay? On the last item, on item D, on the resolution, the Urban Action Grant for $500,000, again, the thing that comes to my mind is I sometimes have the feeling, and I know many of my fellow citizens say, it's almost like there's this endless pot of money up in the sky that's going to fall down, and that's not the case. The question that I have, and I'm not for or against it at the moment. I would counsel, think about what you're doing. I have reservations. But the title, and I don't know exactly what it talks about, the dreams, Veronica's dream or something. And
Loretta's Dream Pavilion.
yeah, pavilion, right. And that was a pretty good sized chunk of money. And again, the dollars there strike me as being desired, maybe nice, but I don't know that they fit in with all of the priorities that exist in this town in terms of roads and property, and now we're having tree problems and all of the other things that the town needs. So I would seriously question the wisdom of passing that, and I won't say don't do it, but I would have real reservation myself. If I were up there voting, I'd vote no on these items and have the manager and the staff rearrange or recheck the priorities of these particular items in terms of the total town needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rue. Other members of the public wishing to comment on any of these 4 hearing items? Just the 4 hearing items. If there's nobody else wishing to comment, I'll declare these hearings closed. Now we'll move on to regular public comment. Are there members of the public wishing to speak? Mrs. Case and then Mr. McHugh.
Linda Case, 103 Park Avenue. I kind of was starting in a positive way. Park Avenue was designed in the 1920s by a prominent New York landscape architecture firm. The point was to be a showcase to encourage quality families to come to town. For 25 years, I've had utter pleasure, and still do, on entering the street that had a defined tree line with a beautiful green in the middle, it's very theatric, like a stage. So far, this has not been touched, and I want to be on record today of protecting the integrity of that, the symmetry, and to not have any of these grotesque trimmings. one thing that should be pointed out to the power company, not only are the trees cut back for sometimes good reasons, but it's revealing the incredible, bizarre clutter of today's utilities. That in the past 40 years, it used to be like a telephone pole, but now if you take a look now, it's revealing cabinet control boxes and crazy things and crazy fixtures. So in one fell swoop, we've taken this, like Main Street, I haven't even seen the green, but I really care about this town, and I hope that we will continue to try to protect. We're talking about making it more of a tourist site, and maybe even the town can assume some liability just to protect these living landmarks. It reminds me of a saying, what's happened, it's like it's like an old Vietnam War saying, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. One other thing I would take issue with is this word of, it's a very Orwellian, enhanced trimming. It sounds like they're trying to be a good face. I think, and I want to do one thing, put in a total shout out for the tree warden, Phil Smithwick, is very dedicated to the cause. I know he's on vacation this week. But anyway, just to sum up, I have one of the town's signature oaks. It's well over 100 years old. And I want to protect it. Phil will meet with the arborists and trim where it's touching over the street. But the whole street has to be protected. Weathersfield's an inner ring suburb. Part of it's now beginning to look like a tenement row with these this new factors. I'm heartened by your response as a council tonight. And again, I know it's balancing a lot of forces, but we also have to keep the verdant integrity of Weathersfield too. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, in the front, yep.
Hey, Donna. I think the CLMP guy's in the hallway.
Hi, I'm Mark Walsh, 138 Broad. The gentleman who spoke up here, I forget his name. I'd like to thank you for coming by. It was very good.
No, he's in the hallway.
Mr. Goodson?
Yes.
He's in the hallway.
Well,
They're getting him.
He's cutting trees down.
Yeah.
just a couple of observations. He was saying that, you can't plant these great big huge trees under power lines because they're going to interfere with the power lines. Seems to me the trees were there before the power lines were. That's just one observation. And the second observation is, I believe this gentleman did pretty much everything by the book in the way he was supposed to, with possibly the exception of notifying a couple of homeowners that he was going to be cutting on his property. I think where the real problem is the town dropped the ball. When I have trees cut on my property, I'm out there watching the people do it to make sure it's done to my satisfaction. I don't think anybody from the town was out there looking and seeing what was getting done. I mean, if I have the work done at my house, electricity done, the town sends an inspector out and looks at it. I don't think it's much of a stretch to have them go out and supervise what's being done on our property. That's just all I have to say.
Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mark Walsh, 138 Broad.
Thank you, Mark. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Kopp, and then on this side on the aisle.
A quick question on the trees. Paul Kopp, 100 Executive Square. A quick question on the trees. For those people that weren't contacted, and didn't give their permission or consent, CL&P's liability is obvious, but how about the towns? Just a question, I don't know the answer. I've been watching every town council meeting, well, this year certainly, and the citizens that come up here and address you have expressed over and over certain views. They're constant, always a new one, but most of them are constant. They've talked about our failed schools. Half of all our tax dollars pay for continuing failure. It's really embarrassing. They talk about nepotism. They talk about funding of special interest projects. They talk of vendors who not deliver on promises without penalty. And of course, they speak of taxes and why no attempt has been made to lower them. I'd like to make a suggestion that the town council publicly state and request of the town manager and all department heads that every effort should be made to review their budgets in view of reducing taxes this year and the next. Can't go further than that, I don't think. It may not be fair to the town employees to ask this of them. They may not have the time or the resources. It is also not fair to the members of the town council, who certainly don't have the time. Because of this, I propose that a group of citizens be appointed to assist the departments in achieving this objective. Many towns have and are using this external resource to the advantage of all. In some towns, it's called an audit committee. I don't like the term, as it implies someone looking over your shoulder. They're looking over your shoulder, but to help, not to criticize anything else. I also previously suggested, as in the last town council debates, that all expenditures be posted on a real-time basis on a town website for all to see. I'm not suggesting any wrongdoing, but the perception of openness is vital, I think. And there was one other thing. I had occasion to meet with a fellow named Tony Martino, who used to be a town employee, and we were talking about the schools. And he said, really ought to remove the responsibility from the BOE for all facilities, for all not teaching activities, and let them do what they're trained to do. And I think it's a very good idea, and I wish I could have thought of it, but, well, in any case. Now, this is election season, and the Independence Party has a couple of slots. And if you believe in what I've just suggested, please contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Sir.
Hi, Jim Pelletier, 61 State Street. Hi, Deputy Mayor, good to see you. More of a question. I'm concerned about the tree cover on State Street. We certainly had our fair share of vegetation management in the last week. And I'm just wondering, does there come a point when we decide that we can't prune, trim, and cut our way out of the problem, and do we start ever considering burying the power lines? And the reason I ask that is you wonder if we weigh the one-time sort of non-recurring cost of burying the power lines versus season after season of cutting and trimming and paying overtime, I'm sure, to do all of this. I wonder if I'm not sure if that's a question for CLMP or more of a town council question, just something to consider.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Catherine Johnson. I'm an architect and urban planner in Middletown. And I came up tonight because how this issue is handled in Weathersfield is really going to set the course for how it's handled in the other 168 towns. And I feel extremely proud of all the council and the things they said, especially the one gentleman that said, "You have changed this for a generation." And unfortunately, sometimes it's an awful incident like this that makes you aware of what you value. And as another councilman said, you know, this is the heart of town, the town green, of the most ancient town. And in all honesty, the trees were there first, and the place that people would go to hear a message if we had no power and no other communications, people would come to the town green. This is the way humans have been gathering since they were together. So the hierarchy of decision making somewhere was lost, that the green is preserved with trees that go all the way to the street, And electricity should be supplied in the least obstructionist way. So I would encourage on this walk that a solution be reached where, yes, a single wire comes in for a light, but that the poles are removed. Secondly, where this problem occurs in residential areas, you know, the way the suburban platting is set up, usually, you know, 60-foot or 75-foot wide lots, a setback from each side, and a setback from the back. You know, that's really built in to put in an alley in the back through which you can run a utility corridor. And even though it would be retrofitted now that almost all of the areas are built, you can still take 5 feet from one side, 5 feet from the other, put in a pole, the wires go to the back of the house, and what you get at the front is an amazing bonus. You can have continual tree-lined streets, a continuous shaded street, and you have complete on-street parking. I'm sorry, I'm removing the driveways too. Strike that last remark. You can combine them both if you wanted to. Now, this idea that wires can't go next to a tree, an arborist called Henry Arnold, in a book called Urban Trees, demonstrates that you can have wires right next to the tree trunk, and in fact, it's more secure in that way because these limbs are shielding it from something that might occur, you know, ice. And when the line runs free and clear without a protection, it's more vulnerable. So quite frankly, every single case has to be evaluated. But you can have wires taken down and then run through the, you know, reinstalled by running through the trees. So we either need to, as citizens and towns, to be a little more aggressive and stand up for the things that make our lives richer, and we can't, or we're going to let we're going to relinquish that privilege, and our responsibility as a steward, and we're going to let the utility companies do what they've done for over 30 years, which is say, oh, you can only have ornamentals, you can only have nut-bearing fruit under those. I'm sorry, nut-bearing trees are a common choice because they grow below the height of the wires. They have encouraged those kinds of shorter trees instead of the statuesque 50-foot tall trees that shape the public space of the street. So I'm rooting for you, Weathersfield.
Thank you. Other members? Mr. Karuk and then Mr. Greenblatt.
Did the other man leave?
Well, David Karuk, 149 Broad Street. I lived in Weathersfield for 16 years. And in those 16 years, I've seen a lot of things happen with storms and tornadoes. I live right on the green, so I saw the tornado, and I saw trees fall right in front of my house on the green. And I really don't know what all this hubbub is about trimming trees. When the ice storm came, first it was rain, then it froze, and then the tree limbs started coming down on all the power lines, and we lost power in much of Connecticut. And the debate was, well, one of the debates was like 2 speakers ago, why don't we bury the lines under the ground like Europe does? And that would eliminate any problems with trees falling on lines. Now, that would be costly, but it would eliminate the problem. So one complaint was, well, CL&P or whoever should have done a better job at trimming the trees next to the lines to prevent this from happening. And here I hear they shouldn't be trimming the trees. You know, when the tornado happened, I lost a huge tree in my backyard. And another huge tree in my backyard right next to my house lost many of its limbs, and it destroyed half the limbs on a smaller tree. Well, that big tree I had cut down because I was fearful that if that tree ever came down, it would crush my house or it would crush my neighbor's house. So I had that cut down. Now the smaller tree that I lost half the limbs of from the bigger tree, this was in 2008 when the tornado happened. Now that tree is flourishing because all that shade from there were actually 2 trees that I had cut down, let the light in for that smaller tree. Now that smaller tree, all those branches that I pruned, well, I basically cut down half the branches because it lost half its branches. But that tree, when I first started pruning it, it was about 15 feet high. Now it's about 25 feet high, and it is looking good. Now trees that are pruned come back. Now I know people love trees. A lot of tree huggers in Wethersfield, Tree City, USA. But trees grow, you prune them, and they come back. Takes years, but they come back, and trees die. One of the trees in my yard, I cut down myself because it was dying. So you know, it's wonderful to love trees, but before I came here, I looked up a fact because I saw this online about how many trees we lose in the United States per year on average. And we're complaining about a few trees, but due to wildfires in the United States, we don't lose 100,000 trees, 400,000 trees, 500,000 trees, 4 million trees, 5 million trees. We lose 400 to 500 million acres of trees due to wildfires in the United States every year. Now, that's from natural causes. Now, this tornado was a natural cause. Now, we complain about the trimming of trees on the green, but I'll tell you what, our real loss, and I regret it to this day, we lost some beautiful trees on the green due to that tornado. We lost some huge trees on the green, and I'm sure all of you saw the pictures. Those were, and that loss was much more than any trimming could have lost. So I don't really see the whole issue with trimming. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Crook. Mr. Greenblatt?
Good evening, Howard Greenblatt, 35 Broad Street, and I have to disagree with the previous speaker. As a resident of the Green, I know that the Green, as a resident of Broad Street, I know that the Green was devastated by storms, but that's natural disasters, and those things we have no choice but to accept. But I was a witness to the tree trimming on Broad Street, on the Broad Street Green, and it is a misnomer to call it trimming. There was no trimming done. It was just cutting every branch all the way up the tree, half of the tree. It didn't matter if that limb was below the wires. It didn't matter if it wasn't even facing the wires. If it was on that side of the road, it was gone. And to me, the Broad Street Green is a town treasure. And why we would intentionally devastate it is beyond me. So it's not just a question of, you know, tree trimming is a good thing. This wasn't tree trimming. This was mauling of trees that have been there for a very long time and are irreplaceable.
Thank you, Mr. Greenblatt. Mr. Clinch?
Jim Clinch, 903 Ridge Road. I take exception to what Mrs. Case said in her presentation about the trees in reference to Vietnam and burning a village to save the town. As a former I'm the state commander of Disabled American Veterans. I find it very offensive, that remark. I think you've been watching too many Jane Fonda movies. And I really, you know, there's a wall in Washington, has 68,000 men on there, and they gave the ultimate sacrifice for you to get up here to speak, and you made an off-the-cuff reference, a progressive statement like that. I think it's a shame that you brought that into this conversation today.
Thank you, Mr. Clinch. Mr. Rue, then Mr. Young, and then Mr. Randall.
George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. There was a poem when I was a kid. It was called Trees by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a tree that grows, or I never shall see anything grows as lovely as a tree with its leafy arms reaching up to the sky. I was thinking of that while all this was going on. Trees are not on my agenda item tonight, but it was very interesting discussion, and I can have some discussion about a particular tree that I'm concerned with. We'll handle that another day. A couple of things. I believe you all got the email that I sent to you this past week, all right? And I don't need to belabor the points. And
I got it tonight.
Oh, there was another one I sent earlier. All right. Well, you didn't get it? No. All right. It was. I did have some transmission problems. I will make sure you get it. But it talks about. You know, Jerry raised the question last week at the last council meeting about getting a brief report on the status of it. And I thought I'd add a few comments. I sent some photographs with some comments, but I'll make sure I'll try to get it to you. I'm not that good at it. But in any event, one of the things I did say in that letter was that I would be happy to share history. Now, you've all heard the term, he who ignores history is doomed to repeat it. And in the light of the history associated with that particular blighted piece of property that Jerry raised question on, I thought the history would be very worthwhile. So to that extent, I'm going to lend you my history book that let's share with the council and give you a little bit more background as to why this particular piece of property is of significant concern to me. And I believe its neglect has been detrimental to the town, okay? So
Thank you, Mr. Rue.
you can look at that, and when you're done, make sure you don't lose it, and I'll make sure that I'll try to get the other stuff to you as soon as possible. A number of interesting things came up tonight: the election, politics, a little bit of reference to differing opinions on what one can say and what one can do when at this podium. It's been referred to this election season sometimes as the silly season. It's not my turn, but I've heard it used. Everybody's up there saying this is what we're going to do for you and all of the citizens of this town. But I'd like to share a couple of positive things with this council. I think the mayor and this council has been eminently fair, as citizens have spoken from this podium, to let them finish and say what they had to say. Sometimes someone here might say something that offends someone, and sometimes, but that's a perfect right. Our fellow citizens, right, wrong, or otherwise, have a right to say what has to be said. And yes, one of the thoughts that I have in my notes here, and I'm modifying it slightly, a lot of guys died, and a lot of guys fought in real wars, so that Linda, myself, Bob Young, other rabble-rousers? No, I don't want to use that term. But other outspoken citizens of this community can get up here and say what they have to say. And I think the council, in its recognition that one cannot always say what one has to say in 5 minutes, which is almost an obsession with the Board of Education, especially our chairman and his sidekick. Point of order, Mr. Walsh. The minute a citizen goes over 5 minutes, you get whacked on and sit down, Mr. Rue, or sit down, Mr. Young. Shut up. It displays to me a level of disdain that I perceive and others perceive on the part of the Board of Education to the citizenry of this particular town. And I think the council is to be commended for not having that particular philosophy. And I would hope that regardless of how this election takes place in the fall, and it may change, Some changes I might be sorry to see, some I might not be sorry to see. But that's another problem. And I think the point is, I know the chair has the right through Robert's Rules of Order to exercise some level of control. But the chair is to be again complimented for the prudent use of this rule, letting people pretty much finish what they have to say, and not too many people get up here and abuse the thing by going on for 15 or 20 minutes. But I know our distinguished chairman at a recent graduation. I happened to notice the clock. He spoke for 6-point-something minutes, and he was going through like a machine gun, you know? And I thought to myself, that was interesting. And yet there was nobody to raise point of order. Maybe the students snickered a little, I snickered a little, and I thought to myself, what I thought is neither here nor there. But in any event, with that said, I think I'm optimistic. And why do I bring it up tonight? Well, I'm going to be away for a while, so I won't be able to say it. Next council meeting, the council meeting after that. And as we get closer to election, I would urge all of my fellow citizens to pay close attention to how our elected leadership, especially on the board, reacts to the citizens of this community, to its seniors, to its more intimidated, less confident, scared when you get up here, and yet 5 minutes is all you got, sit down. Good job, and I'd like to commend you for it. Keep it up.
Thank you, Mr. Rue. Mr. Young?
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I have a handout for the town clerk. Maybe she can hand those out to everybody. It wasn't long ago, the federal government came out with the No Child Left Behind program. And during that program, we've seen Weathersfield have 5 of its 6 schools on that No Child Left Behind list. We have our Board of Education to thank for all of that. And that's quite a knock for any town, have 5 of their 6 schools. And of course, then the federal government decided to disband No Child Left Behind. But we still have that image, and we have yet, Mayor, to get out of the hole that we were in some time ago with that No Child Left Behind. I put together this weekend, as we all know, there was a number of articles in the Hartford Courant regarding scores dip as schools adjust. And they're talking about the various mastery and CAP tests. And you do know, Mayor, I do keep track of these numbers. I keep track of these numbers for every town in the state of Connecticut. I have it on Excel spreadsheets. I can sort it to see who's at the top, who's at the bottom, who's in the middle, and where we are as Weathersfield and other towns as well. What I gave you tonight, and I handed out, was the standard. It shows grade 3, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. That's our elementary. And our CAP test results. And then I have the Weathersfield overall performance. What I do see here is that we've stayed kind of flat again with our elementary school. And I've noticed that our high school has continued to go down. High school is the CAP subject area. And, you know, the high school, for instance, is now at 56.3 as an average this year. Last year was 56.7. 2 years earlier it was 65. 10 years ago, 13 years ago, 2001, we were at 60. We were higher in 2001 than we are today. And, you know, we can all sit here and talk about trees and the waste and the whatever else, but I think we need to really get into serious talk about this education system that we operate. We're now spending $53 million this year for education, and we're looking at school renovation for the high school that's going to bring our high school students' tests down even more. We talked about this 6-8 months ago while we were talking about the renovation. And it was, we're still going to go ahead. We can handle it. These people at our Board of Education can't handle anything. Under good terms, they can't get our grades up. Mayor, you were on the Board of Education 10, 12 years ago. I don't see any trajectories going up over the course of these 13 years from any of those people sitting on there, including yourself. And the current people sitting there have done nothing. There's no leadership. We have school teachers, retired school teachers sitting on the Board of Ed, retired as well as current. We don't see these jumps happening because they bring knowledge in. I think they just come in to have a good social life. And they spend $53 million this year on, and don't care. I mean, they all should resign, for crying out loud. And you people support them year after year. You think throwing more money into education is going to improve. I told you how I feel about paying my taxes. Throwing money into a big dark hole. And that's exactly how it is paying taxes here. But the component for education is even worse. And why are our students not excelling? I mean, if they don't excel and don't get ahead, their lives are going to be pretty bleak. Right now, there was an article in the Hartford Courant a couple months ago about Connecticut had 750,000 people living in households at double the poverty level or lower, and that was in 2010. 725,000 people live in poverty in this state. Granted, it's parents, it's children, but the fact remains that education is failing them all. Because if they had good education and they were able to move up the ladder, they would get out of this poverty. But these people are locked in because of our system, because of the people like on the Board of Education. And I know it was mentioned tonight about the election coming up. I mean, here we have more what I call retreads coming up. More retreads that we had before that got lost in the election, now they're coming back. And they bring no value whatsoever. Same like you guys bring no value. All you do is take care of special interests. And you make us pay for those special interests. And here we go. The whole economy is crumbling, believe it or not. And education is crumbling. And we're in such trouble. And we worry tonight about, trees. But we have a lot more to think about, and I wish people in town would address these issues more. We have economic, financial problems. We have big tax increases coming up in the next several years with our school. A school that should have been taken care of all along, but the Board of Education let it crumble. Ms. Fortunato, I think, was one of the board members back some years ago. You didn't take care. You are Christine, right? I mean, the way you look like a. No, you were on there, and I don't see any increases in these numbers that you brought to the table. But I do see but I hear that the school was in such bad shape. It's like our fire engine that we just had to buy. It's in such. You can't buy parts. We got to get rid of it and spend $800,000. My lawn tractor, the deck bearings went on it. It's 28 years old. It's 3 days, I got the bearings in it. Everything's available. Even for the fire engine that you have to sell for $6,000 and replace it with an $800,000 unit. I mean, the whole thing is bad news. And Mayor, as you know, the economy we're hoping would come back, but Connecticut lost a great deal in this last recession, and we're only 47% back to where we were before the recession. And our children are going to pay that price. The people who are unemployed are going to, and underemployed are going to pay that price. And while they're paying that price, poverty will continue to grow because they're not progressing. So I don't think we have anybody on our Board of Education that should get reelected in this next election. Matter of fact, even here, we shouldn't elect anybody. I think you've all failed the people of Wethersfield. I think that we're on such a downslide that I don't know how we're going to come back. Again, those taxes are going to go steaming up after that high school is done. We're going to be looking at a lot of bad times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Mr. Randall. After Mr. Randall, are there any other members of the public wishing to speak or comment about the trees? Just so if there's not, then I'll let the CLMP folks leave. I don't see any hands raised, so you should be okay to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Randall.
Thank you. Thank you all for your patience here. I'm slowly learning how this works. And I am back. I'm Steve Randall, 35 Beverly Road. I'll try to stay on my own subject. As I started out to say, sure. The Parks and Rec B4A, I hope we approve it. So we can finish the designs, we can get everything in place. I think a lot of good work has gone in over the last 10 years, quite a number of years. And while I may not always be in agreement with the decisions, I am in agreement with the majority. And I think it's a great draft, great plan. Please approve it. Then I think I was going to use the Wilkes Farm as a learning experience, but I think I'll use the trees. In any case, under B1F, the acceptance of the Urban Act grant, I think we should use caution as we go into that Old Wethersfield intersection improvements. I say that because there are 4 intersections that were in the study from, I think it's 2008. I believe 3 of them are under serious consideration. I don't know why I believe that, but that's the impression I've got with time. And in any case, of these 4 intersections, it varies from 4 alternatives to 2 alternatives. In each of the 4, one of the alternatives is no change. So I don't know how this plays out in the funding, in this money that comes from the state, which all the taxpayers, I assume, have contributed to. However, if we're not going to do anything, it seems like we're spending a lot of effort, or will be spending a lot of effort for something that doesn't change. And I do know as a fact, based on previous meetings of similar topics, that there are at least one alternative that's been favored by the team that put this study together that's going to come under vehement opposition because it breaks down the historic aspect of one of the intersections. So I would use caution and suggest that what we do with this is, if it has to go through, fine. If it can be dropped, that's what I would prefer to do until we know which intersections specifically, what approach we're going to use, or at least in general what approach, not one of 4 or one of 2 or one of 3 or one of 4. Rather, we have a decision, we're going to do this intersection and in general this way before we reach out with this money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Thank you for waiting. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to council reports, and thank you, gentlemen, for staying. Any reports from councilors of committees? Okay. Under council comments, any comments from councilors? Councilor Drake?
Yeah, I'd like to add an agenda item to 3B, new business, to make a motion to cancel September 3rd meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
And Mr. Town Manager, we have nothing slated for that agenda, correct?
No, and if something does arise over the next couple days, we're meeting jointly with the Board of Education on the 26th. We can probably put a business couple items together then if we need it to get us past till the 17th. So we don't anticipate anything, but if anything comes up the next couple days, we can tackle it on the 17th at the special meeting.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
To add it to the agenda. Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
To add it to the agenda, correct?
Yes, we're just adding it to the agenda. Any other council comments? Councilor Kotkin?
Yeah, I just, I obviously stepped off during the CLMP presentation. I just want to put on the record that I did that because I work for an affiliate of Connecticut Light and Power Company.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other council comments? Deputy Mayor?
If I may, are we going to have a discussion tonight for the high school? What's as far as that's, is there a part in this that we're doing? With the
Yes,
people
there
that
was
are
a
here?
present. Yes,
Okay,
there was a
'cause
presentation.
I have some comments for them afterwards. Okay, and Mike, just again, I see you gave this pavement management policy and the report and what streets are going to be paved. But what I had asked you last time is where my street stands, and I still don't see anything in the report. So is it 2 years from now, 3 years from now? The system's got to give you some kind of feedback. So, do you have that information, or do you not, or can I not get it?
We only run out the program based on the budget that town council adopts. Then we do what's known as an ideal scenario, which puts all of the roads on the table and runs it out,
Okay.
Irregardless of budget.
Right.
And stuff.
So where's my street stand on that? Where does Ivy Lane stand?
I don't have a specific number, but I'm sorry, I misunderstood exactly what you were seeking, but I can provide the ideal scenario, based on, no limit of funding. We don't project out, 3 years, 5 years, that type of thing.
Okay, so in the ideal scenario, it'll have a date and when the streets, so,
It will generate what's known as a benefit value, and the benefit value ranks when each of the roads should be done.
okay, so that's available, so you can email that to me tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Other council comments? Council Roberts?
Yes, on August 6th was the annual Night Out Against Crime sponsored by the Weathersfield Police Department, which is held in conjunction with the community. I know I'm going to miss people, but Councilor Drake was there, Councilor Montanari, Councilor Hurley, and it was a great night. It's a way for people that usually don't encounter the police department in a positive way to get to see what they do. There was great interaction with the kids. The regional crime van was there, which was bought in conjunction with Berlin, Rocky Hill, Newington, Weathersfield, and I believe Cromwell. Which was really amazing. It's like a mobile NCIS crime scene van. So a lot of regional cooperation in terms of the staffing of that and how it was purchased. And technology today is amazing. So I just want to give a shout out to the PD. They did a great job.
Yeah, I didn't get there till late, so you were gone, I believe.
I told you I missed some people.
I know. You didn't. Other councilors? I just have a couple communications that came to us. I'm not sure if all got them. One is a letter from Allison Kajarian, 99 Hartford Avenue, regarding the tree pruning. I'll pass that along to the town clerk, and also an email from Kathleen Clark, 330 Main Street, again, addressing the power line, so I'll pass that to Dolores to enter. Okay, we'll move along to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you see on the agenda, we were going to review the street paving policy, but is that necessary, or was your question going to be answered by what you asked earlier?
But the further question will be, yes, thank you.
Okay, so do we need to review the policy at this point?
I'm set until I get the information from
Okay.
Mike, unless anyone else wants it.
Okay. And then there was also a request to review the pond project status. Mike put together a memo with all the ponds, including the ancillary drainage projects we vet each year with the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. So I'd ask Mike to go over that.
Hey Jeff, just one quick question about the paving.
Yes.
I mean, I assume we could provide a list if we had unlimited funds of the streets in order what we would do, and then based off the funding, you can say this road will be done in 5 years. But realistically speaking, isn't that setting the wrong expectation for any road on that list past this year? Because we would enter new information about the weather and traffic conditions for the following year, and priority of roads might change the following year. So to give anyone in the public the expectation that their street is on the list 3 years from now might not be in the best interest of the town.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you can go on to the next item.
Ponds, drainage.
Ponds.
And there, excuse, I'm sorry,
Yes.
there's a paper edition of the memo on the podium this evening for you.
What the manager asked me to do is prepare kind of a snippet for each of the various pond projects that we have on the books and where we stand with them. Bell Pond and Murphy Pond Dam are the first two. Those were projects that were actually candidates for the 1995 Malone and McBroom study. They were approved by previous councils and by the Flood Encroachment Control Board as projects that we should be going forward with. The intent is to use the reprogrammed DEP funds to pay for the construction of those projects, along with there's approximately $180,000 of local funds, local match still left in our capital budget towards those projects. Right now, both of them, I met with DEP a couple weeks back. They're in the process of reviewing permitting requirements, things like that, and then we'll be seeking the reprogramming of those dollars. Millwood Swim Pond, obviously another project that just underwent some major renovation work this summer. Pleased to report that it's working very well with Kathy and her design team and the construction thing. So at the moment, there's no further CIP projects proposed within the pond, for the pond and water quality itself. Upper Millwoods Pond, however, is a little bit different story. The dam was replaced about 10 years ago. But that pond itself is obviously severely silted in. It's under a severe state of eutrophication just because of the vegetation. That was a subject of the Goffbrook Master Plan, where we looked at the 5 ponds: 1860 Reservoir, Griswold Pond, Murphy Pond, Millwoods, and Bell Pond, and looked at how much money we were putting into controlling the algae growth, for instance, every year. And all of the sediment, and we came up with cost estimates for each of those. Those projects are carried in the capital budget as funding will allow, and we're constantly, seeking out, if there are grant programs or something like that that could fund those projects and accelerate them down the road. But I mean, just that pond itself, we're looking at dredging out some, close to 11,000 cubic yards of sediment right now. But that's a very expensive project. Griswold Pond, again, not as bad a shape as the Upper Millwoods swim area. It is part of Millwoods Park. We are in the process of doing some dam repairs. There's water seeping around the concrete abutment that's called the dam spillway there. That process will hopefully be taking place later on this week. But that pond could also use some dredging and better ways to control the vegetation. Cloverdale Pond, one of our residents here speaks to this issue. This project here, we have basically a design in place, and the plans are in front of DEP right now, getting permits for what is required to essentially dredge that pond and replace the entire dam and spillway. The estimated cost is about $80,000, and we're carrying that figure in the capital budget in an out year, presuming that we will get the permits in place. Spring Street Skating Pond, another one of our ponds. There we've had some severe erosion on the westerly embankment. The dam overtops and has eroded actually the dam and down into a portion of Spring Street Extension. Our plan there is to essentially rebuild that area that washed out, even off the dam itself, and then provide some erosion control measures to stop that scouring if we could. That's about a $100,000 project. Again, it's all local money. It wasn't identified in the Malone and McBroom study as a candidate for any of the state grant monies. But it's not. It's purely a recreational facility. There's no flood capacity or flood issues that result from not doing that. And then 1860 Reservoir. Obviously, the concrete spillway and the dam work itself is still in good shape. Usually, we have some beaver issues that we contend with, every few years. But basically, the big issue there will be providing and maintaining public access into that facility. Again, it was dredged probably in the early 90s, and is probably a candidate for dredging and for vegetation control as well. So those are the list of the major water bodies in town. What I've also provided is an update of what we're calling the drainage projects awaiting funding. These are projects that we recommend on a yearly basis to the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee for consideration in the town's capital budget. So you can just see a listing of projects that date back as far as 1997, where we've been made aware of the projects, but either through the severity of the project itself or lack of funding, they have not risen to the top. So, be happy to
Councilors
answer
have
questions.
of Mr. Turner? Councilor Roberts?
One minor question, but I want to thank you and the town manager for this. This is very detailed, and it's good to have so that we know what's what. Back to Cloverdale. I think my question last time was, even though we're waiting for all the DEP stuff to be done, is there any way to cut some of those trees? Just tonight I'm talking about cutting trees. Timing is everything in life. Is there any way to have CLMP come in and trim a few trees there? Just kidding.
I did talk to Sally Katz, the Director of Physical Services. She's working with her crew to get out there and clean that up somewhat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from councilors in regards to the report? Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner.
Thank you.
Mr. Town Manager, have anything else?
I was appointed to the governor or the legislative task force on resource recovery in Connecticut, which is basically looking at the whole issue of waste energy. The first meeting is next week. So as we progress through the end of the year and looking at CRA's issues and waste to energy issues in the state, you'll see more and more information come out and more and more reports back on what the future solid waste in Connecticut will be. So
congratulations.
It'll be a busy couple months on that front.
Is there an anticipated time frame?
The legislation requires CRA to complete an audit by the end of the year, and the Resource Recovery Task Force is supposed to finish their work by the time of the legislative session, so any work product of the group can be put into legislation for consideration and debate at the next session. The overall time frame is about 2 years, 48 months from last June to come up with solutions on where we're going to go with solid waste or waste to energy in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you. Madam Town Clerk?
The only information I have received was from George Root tonight that I've got, and this is concerning the West Nile virus and Lyme disease. I believe you may have all gotten, you all emailed it, so perhaps you haven't seen it yet, but we do have it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is council action. Under number 1, we have an appointment to boards and commission. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Appointment to the Buildings Appeals Board, Lisa P. Starin, at-large representative, 28 Dorchester Road, from 8/19/13 to 6/30/18.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next on the agenda is, we don't have any, no resignations,
No.
is 1C, the action on a resolution concerning an application to the state of Connecticut to obtain local capital improvement, LoCIP funds for milling and paving of various streets. Can I have a motion, please?
No one wants $500,000?
It's on page 5.
I'll do it.
You didn't give us the motion, you just.
I don't see it. Oh, it's under the, yeah.
Wrong way,
It's
I'll
under
do it.
There's 2 actions required, correct? Resolution 1 and Resolution 2?
Correct. I only read the first one.
Okay. Be it resolved that Jeff Bridges, Town Manager, is hereby authorized to execute for and on behalf of the Town of Weathersfield, a public entity established under the laws of the State of Connecticut, an application and to file it with the Office of the Policy and Management for the purpose of obtaining financial assistance under the Local Capital Improvement Program. Said application shall be made to obtain financial assistance for the roadway reconstruction, milling, and overlay of Fairlane Drive from 100 feet south of Griswold Road, south to Fox Hill Road, about 2,350 feet. And Resolution 2, be it resolved that Jeff Bridges, Town Manager, is hereby authorized to execute for and on behalf of the Town of Weathersfield, a public entity established under the laws in the State of Connecticut, an application and to file it with the Office of the Policy and Management for the purpose of obtaining financial assistance under the Local Capital Improvement Program. Said applications shall be made to obtain financial assistance for the roadway reconstruction, milling, and overlay of the following streets: Ridgecrest Circle, Ridgecrest Place, La Cava Lane, Hunter's Path, Acorn Way, Pheasant Run, Glenwood Drive, Rhodes Circle, Ridgewood Circle, Clovercrest Road, Pebble Road, Peach Hill Road, Willow Street, a portion of that.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. These 2 resolutions allow us to access the local capital improvement program funding from the state of Connecticut for our road pavement management program. This is an annual action, and it gets us in the queue for the funding for these particular projects. This is a program administered by the state, and it is state money as part of our $1.2 million pavement management program. And Mr. Turner's here to answer any questions.
Can you, either you or Mr. Turner, just walk through how the LoCIP process works from the state down to the towns? I know it's part of the budget that we anticipate as revenue from the state of Connecticut, but just so that the public understands kind of how that process works. And this is something that we have to do, like an administrative task.
Right, and it's a little bit different this year. Typically, as the town manager pointed out, we have set aside $1.2 million as the money we need to keep our roads in shape. And that money consists of our local money, a portion of it is town aid money, which comes from the state, and LoCIP money, which comes from the state. Now, town aid is an outright grant. They just give you the money as an entitlement. You spend it as you wish within the program. LoCIP, you have to identify a specific project, and in the past, we've identified a road that needed reconstruction. For instance, Goff Road or Church Street or Middletown Avenue or Jordan Lane, as we're doing right now. We identify a specific project, we apply for the money, and then we draw down, essentially using that money out of a checkbook, if you will, at the state level. This year was a little bit different because of the way the governor's budget was established and the elimination of a lot of the pilot money. They doubled up on the amount of LoCIP money. So as council adopted your budget, the road levy funds locally went down, and more of the state LoCIP money went into our road paving program. So when we used to get roughly about $200,000 in LoCIP money, this year we're getting about $400,000. So we're actually tapping into it for use in our milling and paving and crack sealing program. So that's why we have a separate application this evening to apply that money towards those projects as well.
Okay. Do councilors have questions? Okay, we have two motions on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Turner. Next is item 1C, action on resolution concerning a fair housing policy to ensure equal opportunity for all persons. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion again. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Weathersfield hereby endorses a fair housing policy to ensure equal opportunity for all persons to rent, purchase, obtain financing, and enjoy all other housing-related services of their choice on a non-discriminatory basis as provided by state and federal law. And be it further resolved that the chief executive officer of the town of Weathersfield or his/her designated representatives is responsible for responding to and assisting any person who alleges to be a victim of an illegal discriminatory housing practice in the town of Weathersfield, and for advising such person of the right to file a complaint with the State of Connecticut Commission of Human Rights and Opportunities, CHRO, or the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, or to seek assistance from Connecticut Fair Housing Center, legal services, or other fair housing organizations to protect his or her rights to equal housing opportunities.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As you know, we participate with the Housing Authority in certain grants to upgrade their facilities. Those grants are provided by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and with those grants come certain responsibilities for fair housing in the community. Part of the actions we need to take as grant recipients is to state our policies in regard to fair housing, ADA compliance, and certain other measures. As you will see later in the agenda, we need to reaffirm those or restate those with each grant. So staff would recommend approval.
Any questions of the Town Manager? Okay, we have that motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Under 1F, action on a resolution recommending the acceptance of an Urban Action Act grant of $500,000 from the state of Connecticut and authorization for the town manager to effectuate said award. A motion, please.
I'll motion. Be it resolved that the Weathersfield Town Council accepts an Urban Action Grant Award from the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development in the amount of $500,000 for Weathersfield infrastructure improvements projects, and authorizes Town Manager Jeffrey K. Bridges to execute all necessary documents to effectuate the receipt of said award.
Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As
Oh,
you
wait a minute, I need a second. Sorry.
Second.
Thank you.
Yes, in April of this year, the Connecticut Bond Commission approved a $500,000 worth of various infrastructure projects, of which these four things are included: the Lourdes Dream Pavilion, Emerson Williams Playground, Montero Field and drainage improvements, and the Old Weathersfield intersection improvements as part of the $500,000. The paperwork for that grant requires the adoption of this resolution, basically the council's support of the project and identifying that those resources will go to that project. In relation to the Old Weathersfield intersection project, it's staff's intent, and I believe this intent is directed from the council, that there is significant public comment in the project design before any course of action is advocated at this point. So we intend through the fall and the winter to conduct those public information sessions, those public comment sessions, particularly on the Church and Main Street intersection, which is the priority under these funds before a design is recommended to the community.
Any questions of the Town Manager? Councilor Drake.
And when we accept the $500,000, do you have to spend all of it or up to it, or how's this actually? I'm thinking again, I'm going to go back to this Weathersfield intersection improvements. I kind of understand what we're looking to do, and I also envision 6 months from now, there's gonna be a lot of yelling. I could see a lot of yelling and whatever happening down there. So do you, what if we come up with a $100,000 plan? Is that how, did you just get to spend up to that? Is that the idea, or are we committing to this 500,000?
Well, if you don't want to spend the money, you can ask for it to be reprogrammed, or we can contact the state to see about how to give it back. Now, the original request was for 4 intersections in Old Weathersfield. So if one represents a particular hurdle, but we can find resolution on the others, we could spend the money there.
But we can't move money outside of these windows. Basically, we're gonna go for
Not
this,
without permission.
Okay. And once we're done, let's say the Emmett Williams Playground, well, we know what that costs, but the Montanaro Field drainage, what if it costs $110,000? You basically tell them it's 110, you give them back the 15 grand, is that how it works?
We'd probably ask for reprogramming at that point.
Okay, very good.
Any other questions of the town manager? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. For these, under other business?
Okay.
Okay. No unfinished business. Under number 3, other business, the Small Cities CDBG grant policy statements. Read the adoption of policy statements. There is a policy statement. Do you want us to do them all together or separately?
You do. Together? Together is fine.
Okay, there's a fair housing policy statement, a certification to affirmatively further fair housing, Section 3 plan, affirmative action policy statement, a Title 6 policy statement, discrimination complaint procedure, Americans with Disabilities Act notice, and Americans with Disabilities Act grievance procedure. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to adopt is attached.
And a second?
Second.
Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As we stated before, these are elements to our compliance with the requirements of the HUD grants we get, whether they be through the Small Cities Program or whether it had been through the Small Cities Program or direct from HUD, basically for improvements to the Housing Authority. So these have to be restated or stated annually or with each grant for compliance.
Okay. Any questions of the Town Manager? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next is item 3B. We added to the agenda the approval of Community Development Block Grant Small Cities Housing Rehabilitation Loan Agreement between the town and the Metropolitan District Employees Credit Union for 579 Ridge Road. Can I have a motion, please?
There's an additional agenda, yeah. There's no motion, just the motion is the topic.
What wants to say?
I'll just move the motion.
To approve.
Motion to approve.
Any second?
Second.
Mr. Town Manager.
I'm sorry about that. This came in this afternoon. It's actually a subordination agreement of the existing loans. This particular property owner is refinancing the house, so we need to subordinate our loans to the new mortgage. We've done this before on this particular property 2 years ago. They are again seeking to refinance, and I would make that approval conditioned upon final review by the town attorney.
Okay, any questions of the Town Manager? We discussed this several weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
It wasn't this particular property, it was another one.
We talked about this property several weeks ago, and we talked about this would be coming up.
Okay.
But any of those properties with those particular housing loans are gonna, every time they want to refinance, we're gonna see that.
Okay.
Excuse me, we had, I heard Deputy Mayor Council, but who was the second?
I did.
You were? Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of the approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 3D would be the approval of an agreement between the Town of Weathersfield and the Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security for a Weathersfield multiple generator installation grant. The total project award of $476,700 The federal share is $357,525. The town share is $119,175. The locations for the replacement generators are the community center, 3 fire stations, physical services, nature center, ambulance facility, and town hall. Can I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. At this time, is Sally still?
She left.
She left? Okay. Sally and Heather Vargas down at Physical Services, along with Mike and Rayanne, put together a very outstanding grant through Homeland Security that will replace 8 generators, which would take us decades through the capital improvement program process. In the 119, this is a 3-year grant, so we spent over 3 years. And in the existing budget today, we have $38,000 for one of these generators. So $38,000 a year for the next 3 years gets us almost there. It's about $5,000 short of the program. So basically, our share is funded through the CIP if we maintain the existing level of effort. So this is good money. We intend to replace 3 of these a year to make sure we get them appropriately bid and appropriately installed. So it's just a great job from the staff on getting this done. We're excited about it, and we're one of the first in the state to get awarded the grant.
Well, that's exciting. Any questions of the town manager? David?
I was just going to say, this is a real nice gift. These have been kicking around the CIP on the list for a long, long time. So, I mean, they've been like forever looking at used ones and this, so that's a real gift. Take a lot of stuff off the list.
Mr. Manager, what do we do with the generators that come offline? Are they going to be sold at auction, or are they going to be used someplace else?
The rules are we're not supposed to reuse those because they're supposed to be basically unserviceable at this point. And some of them are because we can't get parts.
Is it for environmental reasons also? Does that have something to do with it?
Well, the case we made is that they were severely out of date, severely inefficient, and break down quite often. So the reusability was questionable. Now, if we can, put one back together or kind of refurb one, we could probably make use of it. But just taking them out of there is probably going to dismantle them.
Thank you.
And one question that I did have and asked you earlier today was, in regards to the town hall, is it large enough to cover the library?
No, we had to do existing replacement capacities.
I just wanted to verify that.
Yeah, it'd be nice. But.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, thank you. And then 3E, if I counted correctly, the motion to discuss the cancellation of the September 3rd council meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a
We
motion.
added it to the agenda.
I'll make a motion to cancel September 3rd town council meeting.
And a second?
Second.
We talked about canceling this meeting. There was nothing scheduled for the agenda after discussion with the town manager and the current agenda that we have to date. So bringing it forward to council for a vote. Any questions of the town manager?
I just have a comment. I'm going to vote no on this because I think it's important that every 2 weeks we have a meeting in town and there's always public comment. So I would like to see the meeting, even if it's for a half hour on that date, just to hear from the public.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? We have the motion on the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No?
Abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to bids. 4A, the award of the bid, the engineering firm to complete the final design and bid specifications for the Cove Docks project. Can I have a motion?
I'll motion to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Ocean and Coastal Consultants for the final design and bid specifications for the Cove Docks and boat launch, contingent upon town attorney approval of the final contract document.
And a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I'd ask Kathy Bagley to come forward and talk about this particular agenda item for this very exciting project for the Wethersfield Cove.
Good evening. This project is to do the final design plans for the Cove Docks and boat launch ramp for Wethersfield Cove. We're closer to an agreement with the state, and the federal government on the boating infrastructure grant, and we're trying to just position ourselves to be ready to go once that paperwork is completed. So we did ask Ocean and Coastal for a proposal to complete the work, and they had done the original design plans as we went to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for the state, and we received the permit for that, which now allows us to go forward and actually put together the bid specifications and the final design plans for the dock and the boat launch ramp.
Any questions of Councilor Cocking?
Kathy, if things go really well, when would the work begin and end?
It's a good question because the design work can start as soon as the contract with the state and the feds is put together. And they've told us the design work remaining is about 4 to 6 weeks roughly. And they could start on the dock design work right away, which would be our first priority because that's what's funded. And then depending on how that works out with the calendar, some of that work might be able to start late fall or early spring.
And then how long would it take once it's?
It's not that long because it's the installation of the docks themselves and putting them in, and it's putting the anchors into the bottom of the cove. So that's really, we'll have to bring a barge up. I'm not sure where the barge would come from. I always consider it comes up from the sound, but it would be something like that. That would be one of the areas we would look at.
So it could be done next spring?
Depending on water, a little bit on the spring water level and if there's any flooding or tremendously high water. It would be affected a little bit by really high water, but not normal high water, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, that's the idea of the docks, right? That it could sustain
exactly.
that type of thing.
We had a tough season this summer because of the high water.
Okay. And just one other question, and this is somewhat relevant. There's dredging that's now been approved.
That is correct.
Is that going to go on next spring? Do we know what the timetable for that is?
The Army Corps has told us they're going to be ready to bid it out shortly and look for a time frame between December and March coming up.
Oh, to do the dredging.
work, yeah.
So it's very likely the dredging would be done before the docks are in. That would be a good
Yeah, that would be
answer.
That would be great, actually.
Okay. Thank you.
One other question.
Councilor Manousis?
Kathy, on the compensation section of the agreement, there's a couple line items, the bid assistance budget and the construction administration. Those costs, I assume, are those not to exceed amounts? Now,
Yes.
There's an hourly cost, but, okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Item 4B, the award of the bid for the Weathersfield High School renovation site work preceded by a review of the site plan. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to award the construction for bid 1.02 site work to Spazzarini Construction of Enfield, Connecticut for $7,258,000 plus award of the alternate bids number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, and 14, which total $396,000 for a total award of $7,654,000, with the stipulation that alternatives may be deleted from the contract by December 1st, 2013.
And a second?
I'll make a second.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Phase 1 includes the site work for the high school project. We've bid it out. The results of the bids are here this evening. At the last council meeting, there were a series of questions that the council had regarding the site layout and the design elements of the site itself. We've put those questions to the committee and our consultants, and they're going to make a presentation on the overall site layout and the decision process that was made to get us to this point on the site, and then ask for your approval of the site bids or some alternative action the council would like to see happen. So at this point, I'd ask the chair, Christine Fortunato, to begin that process.
Certainly, maybe if we can bring down the screen. We have a PowerPoint presentation that'll be up on the screen. Does everyone have it in front of them? Okay. So the town manager did share with the committee a series of questions that were raised at the last meeting. We discussed that at our meeting and have put together a PowerPoint presentation that our architect, Rusty Malik, will begin with, and then we have Laurel Purcell, our construction manager from ONG, who will provide some additional information. And we are joined by the superintendent and school administrators to be able to answer any questions you have about the education specifications, the curriculum. And I see several members of the building committee who are here, and there are some Board of Education reps here as well. So, Rusty, you good?
Good evening. What I'm going to do is go over a lot of the information that we've really shared with you previously, and just focus on specific areas that have been raised as questions or just confirmation as we move through. Just a few comments about the project itself. We had, when we started the project, there were certain site imperatives that were established for the project. And these included items such as ADA or accessibility throughout the site. This was something that was mandated also by the NIASC report and the OCR report, and we knew we had to do that and make the entire site compliant. This included not only access to the building, but also access to the fields and the bleachers and all aspects of the project, as well as addressing parking and the ability to have handicap accessible parking in the right number and also in the right locations throughout the site. Another imperative was really site safety, and that includes items such as circulation, traffic patterns in the sense that how the buses and the parent cars, etc., interact, how they circulate throughout the site, how the students come in, and so on, including the buses. We had items such as community use and how the site is used by the community as well as by the school for academics, and both had to be considered. Therefore, educational programs had to be an integral component of all solutions. We had to make sure we defined the entrances to each of the buildings and look at emergency access throughout this facility, because there are times when emergency vehicles have to access the site. So these are some of the imperatives that came when we started the design phase of this project. As we go through and look at the educational specifications, we understand that there are some fixed assets here. One is the building. That's pretty much, it is where it is, and we had gone through an evaluation process in terms of defining where the additions are. So these become sort of fixed components of the site. Including in that, with that is the athletic fields that are on the lowest tier of the site. As you all know, the site slopes. It has various levels as you go down, and the athletic fields are at the very lowest level with turf fields and the track, etc. And that's another fixed component. And then items such as the main entrances and the parking itself in terms of where it's located. So these were some of the assets that we were dealing with as we developed the site. We looked at, as you may recall, numerous options, and we've been through probably as many as 20 different options with slight changes to each one of them, and have gone through that process with the building committee, with planning and zoning, with wetlands, with every agency, and moved things around and adjusted them to get us the best results for this particular site. There was always been some question about the intensity of use, and one of the biggest issues that we had was where is parking located and the proximity of the parking, and how we separate the bus and the parent traffic. And as you can see, where we ended up with this particular plan was that we were able to locate the buses off of Wilkett Hill. In fact, this was a complete reversal of one of the earlier, because the design was such that we could make it a complete option. We were able to, so we have the bus access off Wilkett Hill and on the, off of Wilkett Hill, and we were able to divide and locate the parent access off of J Street and along Eagle Drive. And as you can see, that they're completely separated from each other, yet there is the opportunity to cross over when it's appropriate, and security gates, etc., have been included in the overall site design. We allowed for dedicated student parking, which is occurring on the north side of the parking lot. And we've looked at numerous options, including having parent drop-off at the north side as well, and concluded after much deliberation that the intensity of the use would be best with just maintaining student access and student parking on the north side. We have to maintain access to the service areas, such as the loading dock and the service to the building, and we had to make sure that there's accessible parking on the north side. So you can see, whereas there's a number of parking spaces there, the intensity of use has been controlled to a high degree to minimize that particular use. One component that became a major issue is the access, emergency access. We're coming off Wintergreen. That's something that currently exists. We made that the access behind the tennis courts available to the emergency vehicles, and we modified the site plan to allow for appropriate turning radiuses, etc., for all emergency vehicles, thereby allowing ingress and egress, and even the road right alongside the high school has been widened in order to accomplish that. Now, when we looked at the concern, because there was a lot of discussion about are we introducing too much traffic on the north side, we not only looked at it ourselves in terms of our designers and our site planners, but we also vetted it with planning and zoning. We had our own traffic consultant that was retained as part of the design team. We met with the police department, the fire department, and all agencies, and also worked with the State Traffic Commission in terms of providing the information to them and getting their feedback. And all the suggestions were incorporated into the plan, and it was our opinion at the end of that design phase that this provided the greatest amount of safety and improvement to the existing site. As part of this renovation, there are a couple of components in terms of the athletic amenities that are on the site. We certainly have the artificial turf on the west side there. And one of the concerns was how do we deal with the north side and introducing parking there when we've got a softball field? Well, as we went through the consideration of the program, we know that, for instance, the tennis court, there's some structural issues with the base of the tennis court, and those, in order to renovate the tennis court, we'd have to really remove them and replace them. And as a result of that, what happened is we were able to position the tennis courts in their new location, which is really a minimal change, but it is a significant change in the sense that it allowed us to provide the required emergency access and egress on the site. So these lanes on both to the north and the south of the tennis courts were adjusted, were able to be provided with the adjustments to the tennis courts. Knowing that we had to replace the tennis courts anyway, that was a way of handling the emergency access. The softball field was relocated to the turf field, which in addition provided us with the number of parking spaces that are more proximate to the more public zones of the building. Question came up about parking, and this was certainly quite a debate. The existing count, and it is about 410, and not all of these would be considered legal spaces, but we counted every space that we thought could be a parking space there. That's what exists. In the base project, and I say base project because we have alternates for additional parking, we have about 526 parking spaces and an additional 25 handicap accessible spaces. With alternates that were discussed, and the alternates are additional parking on the south side here, and also parking right adjacent to the main entrance. Now, the parking adjacent to the main entrance, there's about 11 spaces there, and that was something that was suggested, and Planning and Zoning felt that it was something that was important to have right at the entrance of the building. It's been defined as an alternate to the project at this point. So that's where we were with where we are with the existing parking and also with the additional parking. The net result of this is about 141 spaces as base bid, and if alternates are ultimately approved, that would add about 205 additional parking spaces to the project. You see the little chart there about the number of parking spaces required. This is based on the number of teachers, visitors, administrators, and accessible spaces is a formula that one has to comply with, and then student parking. And so that number came to about 551 in terms of total parking required. As you can see, under the base bid, including handicap accessible parking, we are looking at 551. Question then comes as to where do we draw the line as to what the minimum parking is versus how much more parking we can have. As we're all aware that during events, whether it's football games or even use of the auditorium and gymnasium, one of the concerns is always where do people park? And I'm just looking at event parking at this point, but there are certainly certain events like open house and certain where there's a lot of traffic with parents coming into the school, and certainly it's almost impossible in many cases to design for that level of parking. But in our case here, with the 551 parking spaces as base bid, we'll be going up to about 600 parking spaces with the alternates, and that's approximately where the need for the event parking occurs, or where we think it can be managed. Now, this is taking into account that that potentially could be a couple events going on at the school at the same time.
Is it appropriate to push it now, or do I have to wait?
I think we can ask.
I have a quick question. The add alternate parking, 53 spaces, where's the access to that?
It's just an extension of this parking lot, so it just continues down there.
Okay. That's an existing lot now. Right?
This is an existing lot, right? It's slightly reconfigured, but it's an existing lot.
No, the add alternate one, is that actually?
No,
grandfathered now?
that's new parking there.
Ready?
Actually, where this turn is, there's some parking right there, and then there's a continuation of the additional parking.
It's next slide.
Okay. So as we looked at the options for parking, because this has always been a discussion, and with many different ideas about what the best solution would be. Some of the things that were considered is where should we locate the parking, and the question really comes up is the north side where the parking is the appropriate location for this particular site. And if you consider where all the events occur, which are on this side of the building and down here at the athletic fields, that is the most proximate location for for parking. And we looked at many other options. We looked at numerous options where we tried to relocate the tennis courts. We looked at options where we tried to maximize parking on the south side. Unfortunately, as we all know, with the additions, and those additions are a function of how the building itself is designed in terms of the existing building and how you add to it, that we were losing parking right here on the south side of the building. So we had to replace parking. These 200-plus spaces are the closest to the athletic fields. They're close to the school itself, and down the main hall, which is where all the main, or the auditorium, gymnasium, and all those assembly-type functions occur. This was the best location to add parking to the school. If we were to go by the number of spaces that are needed for this project, this particular layout gave us the greatest number of spaces that could populate this particular site. Other options that we even looked at, I think, and were discussed, were could we move some of the parking off-site. And certainly, if you so chose, you could, but you need to be aware that anytime you move anything off-site, it loses any state reimbursement, and that was a major concern. Not to mention that, what we've learned is, as we have it right now, there's the softball field is in that location where the parking is, and this parking in a similar form exists. Part of the problem is where people want to park. They want to park closer to where the event is, and that's something that one has to consider in terms of how one designs a site so that it gets maximized in terms of usage. The question comes up is, can we minimize the use of the north side of the property, of the site, by maintaining a lot of the amenities just the way they are, for instance? The concerns we would have is that would create a challenge for us in terms of how we are able to deal with emergency access. We would certainly lose all the available community parking approximate to the venues that are going to be for the building. We still would have some challenges in terms of building services. And again, come back to the issue of accessibility. These parking in this particular configuration just doesn't address parking, but it also addresses grading. It allows us the best opportunity to be able to create access to the lower levels and to the fields as we go further on the north side of the property in terms of access to the fields.
Can I just ask a question before you go on from this parking? In my understanding, you have 3 entranceways that are active in the morning: a parent drop-off on the south end, the student parking main entrance on the north, and then the bus drop-off at the community entrance?
No, the bus drop-off is right here off of Wilkett Hill. So the buses come in, they queue, and they turn around and drop off and leave right there.
All right, so again, so you're creating 3 entries into the building?
So there, yes, the students that get dropped off come in right there.
From the bus?
Onto the main entrance.
From the bus?
From the bus, that's correct.
But parents dropping off and Jay are going?
Parents drop off, they come in, they queue up, they drop off in the student entrance, and the parent drop-off entrance is right there. And then the students come in and park, and their entrance is right there.
Okay, so there are 3, and I assume I'm just thinking there are 3 security issues then.
There are 3 secure entrances with vestibules in those 3 locations. Now, as soon as the school begins operation, the only place anyone else can come in, it will be the main entrance. So that becomes the main point of entry after students have accessed the building.
Rusty, may I ask the administration to come up and speak on this? Issue of safety is brought up.
Good evening, everyone. With regard to the issue of safety in the morning, what we'll make sure we do, whatever entrances that we have open, we will have staffed, as is currently the case now where we have parent drop-off. We have administration waiting in the morning. We also have administration up at the bus drop-off in the main entrance. So whatever entrances we use for either parent drop-off, busing, or student drop-off, we will have administration and security staff available.
And has that been raised as a concern, though? Because I hear your answer, but I'm thinking in terms of professional security presence as opposed to administrators.
Mhm.
You're creating 3 needs as opposed to 1.
Correct.
Has that's been
Correct.
raised, I assume?
Correct, yeah, and that's an issue we have at this point now, Mr. Montanari. I mean, we have 2 security staff now in the building. We have one at the main entrance. We have another one that's out monitoring traffic
Right.
up in the upper area. And again, it's going to be paramount among all of our parents and our students to follow the rules in terms of where drop-off is. You know, on days where we have a rainy morning, you've got parents mixing with buses, mixing with students. So we're going to have to really educate our students, educate our parents as well, to make sure that we're using the appropriate entrances.
And just the last point, what's the
Sure.
security gate reference? There's 2 of those, I see.
Rusty?
Yeah, those gates, they're primarily there to control traffic, so that we don't have people trying to cut across while school. And you currently have one of those gates at the main entrance, right at the circle. And these gates are really there because we don't want anybody driving up. Those areas are dedicated for emergency vehicles.
And the security, Councilor Montanari, the security gate that's there now that is closed in the morning, what ends up happening when we open that in the afternoon when school's over, you'll tend to see cars cutting through the parking lot in an effort to avoid the traffic light at the intersection of Wells and Walcott Hill.
That gate's there now.
Yes.
I have a follow-up question. The parking lot on the south side, 64, that's currently where a lot of parents drop off now. That's been a topic of, I think, of concern for parents. Can you explain the traffic flow into that? Is that one way?
Yes, what'll happen is everybody will come in off J Street, they'll go through the loop, drop off, and then exit down. Eagle Drive will be one way, and then exit out onto Folly Brook. There are some off-site turning lanes that are being established for the traffic flow in that particular case. And then in the afternoon, this gives us maximum queuing space for parents. So, and in many cases, what'll happen is parents won't even come into the loop. They'll just come across and drop off. Therefore, we're looking at a sidewalk all along Eagle Drive there.
So when you come in on J, can you take a left on Eagle?
Yes.
Yeah, so, and then halfway down between those 2 lines, is that an entrance into the lot?
Right here?
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
Okay. Because that's what's happening now. Parents come, like I do, up Eagle, and you pull into the lot, and then it makes 2 drop-offs there for parents. But I guess I'm a little concerned if that's one way, now they can't, there's only one entrance off of Wells onto the site.
The entrance off of J.
Off of J, that's
Yes.
it. And right now, there's 2.
And
There's one off of J, and there's one up Eagle Drive if you come off Folly Brook. So I think that's a pretty big concern, because in the mornings, it's busy and hectic as it is, and now the choke point is all on J Street. I think at least the residents there would have some serious issues, I'm sure, as I would for the queuing back onto Wells.
This was reviewed with planning and zoning, and some of these comments and some of these design ideas came through discussions with them, and also with the traffic consultants, because as they look at how the traffic flow is through this particular site, they look for what the best solution is, and that's how it's been derived, really, as we move forward.
So maybe we need more people on planning and zoning with kids that go to the school.
At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Laurel, and she's going to talk about geothermal and some of the savings, as you can see.
I don't think so. Thank you, Rusty. A question was asked what the savings was for geothermal, and since we have not bid the HVAC yet, right now it's just an estimated savings, and we have that at $1,639,993. The biggest savings component is the elimination of the 220 wells, the drilling for those wells, the piping that connects them, and all the excavation and backfill, all the site work, if you will, that's associated with those wells. The HVAC system inside the building, the value is basically the same. So really the major savings is from the site work. As far as the utility enclosure goes, somebody had questioned about the 20-foot louvered fence. That was something that was put into the design, and there was an analysis done of that fence from an acoustical standpoint, and it was determined that it was not needed. And it was a very expensive item when we bid it the first time. So we're putting in an 8-foot-high chain link fence so that the area is still secure, and then there will be a row of arborvitaes to help from the sound. And the equipment that's located within this fenced-in enclosure will have sound attenuating covers on it. They know that they need to meet planning and zoning's sound requirements.
I have a question on the geothermal,
Okay.
cutting that out. Have there been, I know it's an estimate on the HVAC at this point, so that can go either way. More than likely, it's probably going to increase, but has a study been done, the difference, say, over a 20-year period for the estimated, fuel use compared to the geothermal over the years?
I don't think that, go ahead, you want to address that? Use the microphone.
We did a quick analysis. It's a difficult analysis to conduct because there are so many changes that are occurring
Understand.
as a result of it. But in somewhat, what I did is I looked at the cost of fuel as it currently exists. Remember that we're changing the building envelope almost entirely, so there's going to be a shift in the dollars,
Right.
and that's what ends up driving everything. And we looked at that. We're adding to the building, so that's going to add fuel costs. So when we looked at the analysis, what we did is we said, okay, here's what the existing conditions are based on current. We projected those costs up based on the additional square footage that was going to be added to the building. And then we looked at the cost of the geothermal and what the anticipated energy savings were based on some models of energy models, but again, it's what you put into that model that's really giving you the information back. Based on our analysis, initially we had looked at a savings on an annual basis, I believe, of about $90,000. That number began to come down because even as we changed and went to geothermal before we were eliminating geothermal, we had to make some modifications because the larger spaces, such as the auditorium and the gymnasium, were not conducive to a geothermal utilization. So we'd already modified the plan to about a little around 2/3 of the project using geothermal. So as we did that analysis, what we were looking at is a 12 to 14-year payback. The question that came back is how do you then, initially when we looked at the program as a whole, we were anticipating some grants for the geothermal, or that those sort of went by the wayside because the deadlines are over and there's no more funding available there. But as a result, we're looking at a 12 to 14-year payback, possibly a $60,000 annual cost. And when you take that and you put it into the cost of the savings, it was certainly going to go way beyond that time frame. So the savings is there in the long term, but our feeling is that the 1.6+ million is certainly it's going to take a long time to get there in terms of the.
And just thank you. Just a hypothetical. If you had it, if you were building a new building, this is a question to you. What would you prefer to put in, a geothermal system or an HVAC system? In the type of, I don't know if you could answer that question.
I'm biased in a sense that I'm a lead accredited professional. I believe in sustainability, and in my own home I put geothermal in there. So I'm biased in my opinion.
Okay.
Because I felt that regardless of the cost, to me, I felt it was the right thing to do. So when you ask me that, it's a loaded question to me. If I'm looking at it from a dollars and cents point of view, probably I'm going to say no, it doesn't make sense. But from an impact on the environment, I'll say yes. I would prefer to see geothermal in this project.
And mechanical point of view, what's easier to maintain, a geothermal or a total HVAC system?
The advantage we have here is we have gas available to us. And if we didn't have gas available, we'd be having a completely different discussion. because with natural gas available, we are now able to use equipment that is highly efficient. You know, you're in the upper 90% efficiency factor, and that's making the difference here. So that equipment also runs a lot cleaner. There are fewer components to maintain. There are a lot of smaller units when we're dealing with geothermal. So the question about whether it's going to take more to maintain, I'm not a mechanical engineer, so my guess would be it would be pretty much a wash.
Okay. Thank you.
Another question that was raised was regarding the bleachers. There was a question on what we thought we were going to save with the bleachers. Talking to our site contractor, because they priced the bleachers prior to the change as well as afterwards, the savings is approximately $75,000. And just to be clear, the amount of seats that were eliminated, if you will, or changed, all we're doing is giving you back the same capacity that you have now. So during the design process, the visitor side only was, there was an increase in seats on that side. So what we're giving you is the exact same number of seating capacity that you have now. And I'm going to let Tom Moore talk to you about any concerns regarding the capacity of the bleachers.
Thank you very much. Again, just to make sure that this is understood, the project called for an increase in the capacity for bleachers. So in this value engineering exercise, we just went back to what the capacity is right now. Of course, we're going to be changing home and visitor sides in order to have the press box not have the need for an elevator in terms of being ADA compliant, right? But I would say that really there are only a number of times where we have in excess of a crowd that our current bleacher capacity cannot handle. That would be every other year at Thanksgiving, and on occasion when we have a playoff football game, which we have had, and when we have playoff soccer games, or a circumstance as we did 2 years ago when we were the #1 team in the state, we were playing the #2 team in the state, and it was an evening game. So it's only on those occasions where the capacity doesn't handle the crowd. But for every other circumstance, for field hockey, boys soccer, girls soccer, football, for all our spring sports, everything is that bleacher capacity handles the amount of people that we have.
That's good, thank you. One of the changes that we made was to change a material that's running under the baseball field from RCP, which is reinforced concrete pipe, to high-density polyethylene, HDPE, and that was really just to be consistent with the rest of the storm drainage piping that's being installed. That was, it really wasn't supposed to be RCP to begin with, so it should have been HDPE. That's what all the rest of the storm drainage pipe is that we're putting in place, and it is a somewhat cheaper material. The pipe that is running under the baseball field is not for draining the baseball field. It's actually carrying drainage from the parking lots and the high school building. Another question was on the changing of the bituminous concrete pavement. I know it's very difficult to see. I have clear pictures of these with me so that you can see, but there's two pavement profiles that we have. We have parking lot pavement and drive pavement. The parking lot pavement is really just where cars are going to be parking, and there are two layers. Where's my pointer? Where's my pointer? Where's the pointer? Isn't it the red button? The red. Yeah, why isn't it working? Okay. Anyhow, the top section is got two layers. They have what's called a binder course, that's 1.5-inch layer, and then there's a 1-inch layer on top of that that's called a wearing course. So it's a total of 2.5 inches. That particular pavement section will be in the parking lots that you see that are light gray, that's located above the tennis courts. Within the parent drop-off loop, that light gray. Also, below the tennis courts, most of that pavement in there is also the light gray. Is also that first section. The bottom section, which is a 3-inch binder course, with 1.5 inches, which is what we've reduced we've reduced the 1/2 inch off of that profile only, will still give you 4 inches of pavement. And that is where all the drives are. So the entire drive that's coming in off of Wolcott Hill, the entire bus loop, what's going around the loop to the main entrance, the loop where the parents are going to drive around because they anticipate buses going through that loop, and also on the south side of the tennis courts going up to the loading dock is all this heavy-duty pavement, as well as when you come in off of Winter Green and you take an immediate right, this is the emergency access only, which is that little road that's north of the tennis courts, and it loops around is all this heavy-duty pavement. So there was quite a bit of it, and the 1/2 inch, by shaving that off, there's a lot of areas where these two pavements interface with each other, so it makes it much easier to work it in the field if both top layers are 1 inch, that they're equal.
If I could just comment just on the pavement issue, our town standard in our zoning regulations is only 2 inches of pavement required. So what's actually being proposed is more than double that. The 4 inches of pavement is our typical road cross-section. So we're building these parking lot heavy-duty access driveways to the same construction standard as our roads are being built.
Okay. Any questions on that? Again, I have clear sketches, I have clear pictures of that with me if people want to look at it. Other questions on reimbursement, just to be clear with what the definition of reimbursement is. 100% reimbursement means an item of work is 100% eligible. That just means that all costs associated with that particular item of work is fully eligible for reimbursement by the state. So if your reimbursement rate for this project is 50.71%, that means for every dollar that you spend on a fully eligible item, you'll receive 50.71 cents to pay towards that. So I just want to make sure that the definition of 100% reimbursement versus 100% fully eligible is clear. There are some items of scope of work that is limited reimbursement, and these are definitions that are given by the state with what types of work they feel are limited reimbursement. A lot of it has to do with athletic fields or bleachers or auditorium seating if your auditorium is oversized. But again, these are definitions given by the state, and the scope of the work for your project, we have to meet renovation status, and in order to meet renovation status, every facility that's on the property has to be treated like new. In other words, when we're done with this construction project, every aspect of this of the building and the grounds have to have a life expectancy of as if it was new. So that's why you cannot pick and choose your scopes of work really when it comes to doing certain items. And then there was a question about the financial obligation. So far with the changes that are being considered, your obligation is actually decreasing because with the mezzanine, that's actually helping with the square footage on the project because right now the building is oversized. And then the last question item I was going to talk about was where the contingencies stand. The way that we do an estimate is it starts with a schematic design estimate. It's called an SD estimate. And there's not a lot on the drawings, no offense, Rusty, but there's a lot of concepts still, there's ideas. And so what happens when we do a schematic design estimate, we're not only picking up the pieces of what we see on the drawings, we also leave what's called contingencies for items that we think are going to show up, they just haven't been drawn yet. So we carry that contingency, it's called a design/estimate contingency, because there could be items that Rusty hasn't contemplated yet, or they could be things that we didn't estimate. Maybe we didn't have grading plans available, and there could be more grading that's involved, or we didn't at that time determine that some existing storm drainage could be reused. And then in another design, it turns out that we have to replace storm drainage. So it's those types of items that this contingency is held for. So at our estimate that we did back at schematic design, we had $2,826,415 in design estimate contingency. As the drawings progress and we get to the working document estimate, which is what we did in May, as the drawings progress, it is natural progression for that contingency to what we say move up into construction. In other words, it comes out of that line item and it goes to offset where, you know, because it's getting absorbed by the construction, and that's what's supposed to happen. And when we go out to bid, that's actually going to be zero. Okay, we're still not out to bid with the entire project, so that's why we're not releasing the dollars yet. So there's still that $487,000 in design estimate contingency. Escalation, same idea. When we get to our schematic design estimate, really it's just a percentage of the construction costs and when we project bidding the project. So back in SD, which was in October, we had a much bigger escalation number because we were that much further from bidding. And as we work towards the time frame, it keeps getting less. And that also will go to zero the day of the bid. But for now, we're holding monies there. There's a construction contingency. That is also a mere percentage of construction costs. So back at SD, we must have had more in construction costs because there's $2,907,000, and it's that same percentage. I believe it's 5%. We've been carrying that continuously. So that 5% is still not touched. That will be there the day of the bid. That will stay unless we happen to be under budget. The extra funds will probably go into there. Owner's contingency, that is also a percentage usually based on the owner's costs, and that started out at SD at $597,755. Working documents, it dropped to $397, and that was more to pay for the asbestos consultant and all that sampling that was getting done. And really, the only thing that's affected it since then is what was the thing we just hired? The local reviewer. To hire the local reviewer, we had 10 grand in the budget for that, but it was 48,000 for that. So that's the difference between those two numbers. So just so you understand the progression of the contingencies, the owner's contingency and the construction contingency, they stay for when the bids come in. But those two other items get absorbed into the bids. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that as well. Okay, and that's the conclusion of our presentation.
Do councilors have questions? Councilor Cochran?
Thanks. A few questions. One is, I assume that, I'm not sure this was reflected in there, but I assume that there are energy efficiency rebates from the gas and electric companies that'll be available for the project because of the high efficiency HVAC system. And do we have an estimate about what those will be and how we plan on using them?
Sure. The town has actually entered into an agreement with CLMP to do an energy model before and after, based on the final construction. What they do is it's not like the old days where they would say, okay, you put in this model train air conditioner and you'll get $757 or whatever and stuff. They basically look at the percentage of energy cost reduction that you're looking at. The base rate was like 25% savings in energy costs throughout the building, equates to a dollar figure. Right now, the mechanical engineer is targeting close to 30% reduction. And that's going to be a substantial number up in like the $300,000 to $400,000 range based on where the actual number falls.
You mean that's what the rebate would be?
That's what the rebate will be to us.
Okay.
And that is not counted at all in any of these figures.
And that'll come off the town's share.
Right. Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so the expectations would be credited against the cost of the project to the town.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. And is there, and you're talking about the electric now, you're talking about high efficiency gas furnace for the building. Is there also a CNG rebate? And in addition to a CLMP rebate that we'd be eligible for?
They're modeling the entire energy of the building. So it will factor in the windows, the insulation, all of that gets factored in on what the potential savings would be.
Okay, so it could come from two different programs, though,
Yes.
is what you're saying. Okay, that's number one. Just back to the tennis courts. It looks like you said there was a slight movement to the tennis courts. Is it that they're getting moved closer to the building? Is that because there's still 8 courts?
Yeah, actually, they're moving laterally, so they're moving east-west, and they are moving minimally north-south. I believe it actually moved closer to the north side, because
Closer
we were
to the north side.
widening.
North side of the building.
You want me to get a bigger picture?
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, wrong one.
No, I'm wrong on that. I think we had a little bit more space here, even though we widened this road here. We moved actually slightly south, but it was, I think, about 2 or 3 feet.
Okay, so that's minimal. Now, we had, as Kathy knows, we reconstructed the tennis courts, I don't know, it's like 10, 12 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And then we had a lot of issues with them, and I think it was because of some underground stream or water movement. Have we accounted for that in the construction of the new courts?
Underneath these tennis courts, there's a whole drainage piping system just dedicated to the tennis court area.
Okay, and that doesn't exist for the existing courts. That's probably
I don't believe
that's
so.
probably our current problem, more or less.
That's the reason for the structural problems with the whole tennis courts. They'll continue to deteriorate. If you just try to patch them, you'll be patching them forever.
Right. Well, we reconstructed them, and then they cracked pretty quickly. And so I just want to make sure that there's some accounting for that, so we don't have the same thing that we had when we rebuilt the tennis courts like 10 or 15 years ago. So it sounds like you're accounting for that. And just lastly, on the parking lot that is east of the tennis courts, is that pretty much the same size that it is now, more or less?
Actually, it's increasing by about 20 spaces. I think currently existing, it's 74, and we're going to 98. And that's primarily because of some of the reconfiguration of that north end of the site.
And on the behind the tennis courts, it's a very narrow strip between that and the property that's on Westway. And my recollection is there's a slope to that. So I guess you have the emergency drive that I guess you need in case for some reason the main road's blocked.
That's correct.
To be able to get. So what are you doing back there to create, because that's a pretty tight space, what are you doing there to create that 18-foot wide drive and still say on our side?
This whole area is being regraded. I mean, just all the way down. It's being regraded to make not only for the egress and access for emergency vehicles, but just in general, because there's a step down right there, between after you get past the tennis courts and the softball fields, there's quite a grade change. So that whole area of the site is being regraded to make it a more gradual slope and to allow the appropriate gradations on the pavement.
Okay. Will the tennis courts be fairly similar, right, to the parking lot, or pretty close, or it would
They're
be
just a slight step up.
Right, there's a slight.
Oh, so that's a big change from where we going down to the softball field currently.
Right.
Okay, and you're again. So on the north side, you're able to create that barrier, I guess, or that emergency road, without obviously getting too close to the property owner's backyard.
That's correct.
In Westway, do the property owners on Westway, are they aware that there's going to be a road there behind their backyards?
This was presented at the planning and zoning hearing with our meetings with them. And that's one of the conditions. I mean, that's why you see a lot of vegetation on that side, too.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other counselors? Counselor Montaneri? And then Deputy Mayor.
A broader question, Rusty. We'll see it tonight in an item that's up at the end of the night with an item that went up about 10% from our original estimates. And I'm hearing from contractors all over about price escalation that's associated with, kind of post-recession pickup, I guess, of contractors who are getting busier and busier. And notwithstanding we build contingency, I have two questions. Where is our flexibility if costs continue to escalate as we go through each piece in terms of where we're going to identify? I know we've already done some adjustments, and two, in light of that answer, have we had dialogue with parent groups about those priorities in case something more significant than asphalt needs to be addressed?
The first question I can address. We have noticed just in July, with 2 other school projects coming in for bid, which is when this first site bid came in, that the site was high on all 3 of the projects, and also the MEP, which is HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. Those were also higher. So what ONG is doing is we are using the drawings that have gone up to the state, final design. We're actually doing another estimate and we're only concentrating on those areas where we have seen this increase, and we are going to make sure that we have a good handle on where we think these costs are. So it's not just the HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. We're also going to check the steel. We're going to check our demo and abatement number, our masonry, and our drywall numbers. So we're actually doing a whole estimate with those particular trades on the latest drawing, so that we have time. We were supposed to be done with that estimate in 2 weeks, and we just started it last Tuesday. So we missed the building committee meeting. That's next Monday. We'll definitely have the information for the meeting on the 9th. And if we do think that there's going to be an issue with these particular trades, we're going to do the same exercise that we did for the site, which is to identify items that either can be turned into an alternate or possible deductions. But we need to have, this will give us a very good idea of where we think the numbers are for those particular trades that we've noticed in the last 2 months are different, that they've increased.
And then the second question?
The second question was?
Well, was what level of parent participation, particularly the groups that were involved in getting the referendum passed, how active has that group been in looking at where cuts could happen within the next 90 days?
Well, really, we're at the mercy of our construction manager, right, in terms of any type of value engineering ideas that they come forward with. So when in fact, if we do have to approach that, that's when we would gather the parental input into that. But until then, really, we just have this project. We're not anticipating a large-scale value engineering piece based on what the estimates are. But again, if that does happen, certainly there's no question that we'd have to get input not only from the parents, but certainly, you know, initially from our Board of Education as well as our central office administration.
And the time frame on that, if we're getting squeezed, is what in terms of getting this up to the state for approval?
We are going to be done with these numbers next week, midweek next week. So we'll know where we stand.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
With the difference in the numbers you're estimating with the project next week and the cutbacks that are being made, I went through a bunch of information, and I know this is premature at this point, but as conservative as I am, I'm convinced a project of this size to be completed correctly, probably we're going to be we'll roughly need anywhere between $3 and $5 million extra. Is what I've calculated over the numbers I came up with. Now, I know they're nowhere near, I don't have the data that you work with, but do you think it'd be appropriate, and I know I have to do more work on this, but if we were to go out to another referendum and ask the voters for another, say, $5 million, but put a referendum in place before the end of December, like the beginning of December, and have a special referendum, do you think that's the appropriate thing to do at this point, so we're not cutting too many corners and decreasing the design of the building in a way where when it's finished, it's not completed like we thought it would be finished, and then we're suffering 10 or 15 years down the road?
Do you want to address that? Is that the question? Oh, okay.
Well, either one of you. I mean, you're on the building committee also, Christine. Maybe you could, but either one could answer it.
Well, I don't think,
Yeah,
I don't think that that's a decision that the building committee
Right.
can make. I mean, that would be something that the town council would have to approve.
I understand. What I'm saying is, I'm just getting to the point that with what we've seen so far and the difference in bids coming in, that I think to complete the project and have it come out the way we want it to come out, so it stands up for the next 20 years. So we're not having any issues down the road or cutting things out that we wish we put in before, like we did with Webb School, and the windows will never get done. Maybe it's appropriate to go out or have a discussion with this council or with the committee together to see if we have to go back out to referendum to ask for another $5 million from the taxpayer.
Well, first of all, I think that's speculative. We have a long way to go. As I think Laurel said, these bids might be over, but there could be other ones in the future that come in under. And, let me just ask Laurel a follow-up, because at our last meeting, one of the counselors said that half our contingency had been spent and put that out there like it was a fait accompli, and now tonight you're saying that's not true at all.
Well, when you say half of the contingency, when you're looking at the Munis report, all the contingencies, you saw that there's 4 of them, are lumped together on, I'm sorry, that's not true. 3 of them are lumped together on the Munis report. So when it's showing, I showed you the progression of design estimate, contingent escalation, that's what, it's not being spent. It is being, those funds are being reallocated just how they're supposed to be as you go from estimate to estimate. The construction contingency has not been spent,
Thank you.
so.
Can I make a
Mayor,
comment?
you want to finish? I'm
Let me
sorry,
just-
hold on.
Okay.
John,
Go ahead,
not
go
done.
ahead, Dave.
I was just say, John, there's not anybody in this room other than Laurel right now can say we're $3 to $5 million short. Nobody.
No, and I just said.
I'm just
No,
saying,
no,
be
listen, let me
careful what you
finish.
say.
I
I'm
just
saying
said
is
from the
what-
numbers I looked at, and I.
You don't have any numbers.
I don't have, from the information I got from the building committees and
Nobody
what's
in
going.
this room, John, that could make an announcement to say we're $3 to $5 million short,
Okay.
other than Laurel. And phase 2 will come out the next couple, 2 or 3 weeks. If we have a problem, we all got to get together and maybe we do what you're talking about. But
That's all I'm saying.
we're so far from that.
Okay.
And are we off course? No. Would we like to do more? Maybe. But I'm just saying.
All I'm
the
saying is
idea
what
to say we're $3 to $5 million short, nobody in this room but Laura can say that.
I understand,
And
but
I don't
all
think she's
I'm
saying
saying is with the cuts that are being made and some of the things that are being reduced out, we should really take a strong look at it. Maybe we need more money to do these things. That's all I'm saying.
I think, truthfully, I talk to Christine all the time. There's no question, if that comes the case, they'll be right here real quickly and say we have a problem, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
So, again, John, I
That's fine.
understand what you're saying is, but let's see where we're at. We're at from 0 to 10, we're at 2 right now, if that. So let's take a deep breath, see what falls out. And if we cut 1 inch of paving off, I don't think, or some bleachers, we're not in a problem right now. We could be, but I think you're not that far away from where we need to be. So let's see what happens.
So, Dave,
Any other comments? Counselor Manousis?
No, Dave, I agree with you. I think it's way too premature before we even have phase 2 bids to make that assessment. But I want to go back to that parking again, and
Options?
yeah, the parent entrance and drop off. And my gut tells me there's something wrong there, and maybe it's because I'm in the parking management business, but I just want to make sure I understand. So J is going to be 2-way at all times, but Eagle will be 1-way at all times.
Eagle is a Board of Ed property.
So Eagle, okay, but Eagle will be 1-way at all times.
No, I think it was going to be only during drop-off and pickup that it was going to be.
All right, so during drop-off and pickup. And then what, during drop-off and pickup, what's Folly Brook Boulevard?
One way out, right? During drop-off and pickup.
So during drop-off and pickup. So we're going to have one sole entrance into the property on J Street then, right? During drop-off and pickup. So is there any consideration, I mean, I know when it went to planning and zoning, I shouldn't blame them. I mean, I know you guys designed it, you guys did the studies, but something just doesn't sit right with me. Am I missing something? Is there gonna be a light somewhere on Wells that's gonna control traffic, or?
What we're looking at on Folly Brook is adding turning lanes. So you have a dedicated left turn lane, dedicated right turn lane. So that we can queue cars that want to turn left, Folly Brook exiting onto Wells. They can stack. And then there's a free-flowing movement to
There'll be
the right.
two lanes coming out there.
Two lanes coming out of Folly Brook at Wells.
So there'll be no light there, though?
No light.
Because, I mean, people don't usually take a left there because you can't really get out.
A traffic light was not warranted. You know, traffic engineer stated that, and planning and zoning confirmed it, and SDC also confirmed that.
Is another another lane on Walcott? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember way back. Wasn't it a turning lane on Walcott right there?
There'll be left turn lanes up at Wolcott by the school driveway.
Right, yeah.
So there'll be a left turn lane,
right,
northbound into the site, and then a left turn lane southbound into Cotwell, which is actually the access down to.
Right. So I mean, I understand that school buses will go in and out of there. So, okay. I don't know, I would just hope that maybe you can revisit. I think at Planning and Zoning, you guys said you would be welcome to, you would be willing to revisit that
Well,
if there's other considerations.
I think what we suggested to planning and zoning is that these numbers are all based on good, solid engineering from our traffic engineer. It's been vetted by planning and zoning, public input, and kind of confirmed by the STC folks. All of these things are totally flexible, though. We aren't changing lane widths and things like that, where, for instance, if Tom Moore all of a sudden said, we have to change this whole thing around and stuff, we could do that. We have the flexibility to do that.
As long as you have that, I guess I'd be comfortable.
We aren't locked in it all. This is the pattern that we think is going to work the best. It's going to be the safest. It separates the kids, the buses, and the parent drop-off, which are three competing interests at any given time. We think this is going to work the best, but through these security gates and things like that and signage.
So if you had to create the reversal and you had the queuing on Folleybrook Inn and Eagle Drive up to that lot, you could always change that if you wanted to.
Absolutely. Rusty's design staff has built in all kinds of flexibility into this.
It's not on this plan, but we're also adding left turn lanes out on Wolcott Hill Road. So we're also doing some striping out there as well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from counselors?
I just want to thank the building committee and staff that worked on this, because we did submit a list of questions, and having the visual and the schematic and making it in colors we can read and pointing out in red the items that are important makes it very, very easy to follow, and so that's very helpful to have this document. Thank you.
We have, if there's no more questions, we have a motion on the floor to award the bid for Weathersfield High School renovation site work preceded by the review, which we've already done. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next on the agenda is 4C, award of the bid for Amato Circle drainage. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to award a contract to M&M Construction for Amato Circle drainage improvements in the amount of $21,120, and to authorize the transfer of $4,120 from CIP Drainage Reserve.
And a second?
Second.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As you heard earlier this evening, there's a list of drainage projects throughout the town. Amato Circle has been one of those projects that has been on that list for some time. As part of this year's budget process, that one rose to a level of capability being funded. Actually, during the construction of the budget, there were three possible solutions to this. One was the $17,000 solution that'll handle a majority of the issue. Then there's some additional $4,000 work. Then there was the mega project, which ran us up to about $50,000, $60,000. The $17,000 project, or in under this bid, $21,120, will handle the vast majority of the water, and is an immediate resolution to the problem in the neighborhood where the backyards would just flood. I mean, just standing water in those backyards, product of not having the capability to escape, which this project provides for, but you're also getting sheeting action from the condos behind the houses from the adjacent property. So this is a good resolution to this project. We've worked with the neighborhood throughout this entire process, and they actually went to CIAC, and we're at the public hearing on the budget. So any questions for Mr. Turner?
Any questions of the town manager or the town?
How long has this one been on the list compared to all these other ones?
This was like in the mid-2000s, so it's probably been about 8 years or so.
And this just has that much worse flooding than the other ones?
Yeah, it becomes more prevalent because of the mosquitoes and the West Nile virus issues. There's no moving water here, essentially.
All the other ones
It's trapped.
All the other ones flooding.
The others have, right.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you. Okay. For D, bids, award of bid for Dorland Circle drainage. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to award a contract to Coda Construction for Dorland Circle drainage improvements in the amount of $25,795 and to authorize the transfer of $795 from the CIP drainage reserve.
And a second?
Second?
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Again, this is a project that we've had on the list for some time. The owners have come to the CIAC committee for the last couple of years,
Yes.
encouraging the town or asking the town to fund this project. Couldn't do it last year. This year, it was able to be funded, recommended by the CIAC as one of their drainage projects for the year. The project's been bid. We're recommending approval. It's time.
Any questions?
And just to make a comment, this is kind of an interesting project because this particular street, all the people in this street they want to spend their own money to put the drainage in. All they're asking for is a place to put the drainage too. So it's like, this is a good thing because we're helping a lot of people willing to spend their own money. So it's a little bit different than most.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. There are no ordinance, resolutions, or appointments for introduction. Minutes for the July 23rd regular meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve the July 23rd minutes.
And a second?
Second?
Any corrections, additions, deletions?
Mayor, a couple on, just a few, on page 4, Comstock Ferry is misspelled. On page 11, Honda Civic is misspelled, but more significantly, on page 11, there's an item where it says that all councilors present voted in favor of a motion, and then it says that it was passed 8-1. So we must have one thing must be wrong. This is on the motion to table the lease agreement.
Okay.
Dolores, do you want to take that back and review the tape?
Sure.
That was, there was a lot of discussion around that. Are there, so we'll move to table these minutes?
Table.
Okay.
And a second?
Oh, wasn't this the meeting we had the big discussion on the radio system? Was this? And there's basically nothing in the whole report on the radio system. I mean, we had a huge, that was like half the meeting. So Dolores, did you miss
I
it?
think because we have all the discs available that you can play and listen to,
Okay.
rather than trying to interpret everybody's voice and get it to the
Then
right
maybe
person.
what you can do is on this,
Make a note.
just make a note and say that if people want detail on that, please go to the disc.
Oh, I
Because
thought
the
we
whole
had
meeting was about the
done- I
radio
thought we
system
put
and we
that
missed
there.
it.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll move to table to clarify that motion and also add the additional language in regarding review of tape for that discussion.
Yeah.
Is there, I thought I heard a move to table. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. 6B was a special meeting, July 30th. Motion for the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any corrections, additions, deletions?
I have a correction, or on page 4, the sixth, seventh line down, where I said, obviously, we are going to use the same criteria. The next one, I'm sorry. Unless we are willing to lower the standard with a different type of a system, or we are going to accept an untested system, like the Tate system. So there's an extra word in there.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's no reason to change.
Any other corrections, additions, deletions?
I think under the also present, it says Mike Eichner. I think his name is John.
Thank you, Jerry.
Oh, thank you.
Any other corrections? Okay, we have the minutes for July 30th. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. And the regular meeting minutes for August 5th. A motion?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Any corrections, additions, deletions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions?
Abstain?
Abstain also.
So Dolores, you're all set with that?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. On under 7 is public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Miller and then Mr. Martino.
John Miller, 45 Highland, Mayor, members of council. I hope I can remember 5% of what I listened to and made a mental note tonight. Staff, you were right on the money with an item you were bringing up there on how this is going to function. But let me be brief and take one last shot at this thing. I've seen some colossal mistakes made in this town. We build this thing on the north side of the high school the way it's being discussed and proposed here tonight. That's going to rank right up there with some of the big ones. So I think you're tackling something that's I frankly haven't understood from several months here. And let me say, I enthusiastically supported the renovation of the high school when we started. One of the things that appealed to me, go back and look at the information you sent out to the voters. You were adding 2,000 seats. You were adding and don't go by my memory at this hour, but you were adding 1,000 or 1,100 on one side, 700 or 800 on the other side for the 2,000. And I thought, great, just what we need. You were getting 100% reimbursement. Why in the world anybody would say now, we're going to save money and not put those in? I don't know. There's certainly a time going to come when we're going to need them. But Mike, I wouldn't, you got a good section for, I'd use it. It'll save you money down the road. The amount of money you can save by cutting your standard section, why do it? It's, again, 100% reimbursable. But, you know, and it's not like there isn't an option. One thing we didn't, well, there's a couple of big things we didn't hear discussed tonight. That softball field, do you people realize that the grade of that field, which is about an acre out there, is coming up about 4 feet? That's several hundred truckloads of material. It's coming in Walcott Hill, somehow going to get down through to that site. I guess it's going to start in the next few weeks. Timing's perfect. School should open. You can park 250 cars over there. Trucks are going to start coming in. That parking shouldn't be going there. I know I can't say it any more time or perhaps any plainer, but you have the perfect option for the parking lot, and it's down at the corner of Folly Brook and Eagle Drive. The grade is right. The cost will be a fraction of what this is going to cost you to do it. Remember, you're taking a softball field out of there, which is one of the best softball fields in this area. And that I know something about. I've watched them for several years out there. And you're taking the softball field out, you're raising the grade up about 4 feet, then you're going to build a $600,000 parking lot on top of that. It's, you know, we got to be talking $1 million out there on these items. And as I say, it starts with that parking lot. Put the parking in the right place. There's no reason to move the softball. The tennis courts, yes, they're cracked. Personally, I don't see the structural damage. I don't see the settlement, and they do drain. So to have over $400,000 going to that, which I guess is only 50% reimbursable, I think it's a big waste. But I know I can't make it any clearer. I'm just telling you strongly, I think it's a mistake not to somehow get I don't know what to say, another look at it. But I don't think it's going to take you too long to realize it, because whenever the trucks are going to start coming in there, I'm sure most of them Laz likes to get them, Stott likes to get them about 6:30 in the morning instead of 7, so you start moving truckloads in there that early in the morning, trying to park 250 cars in there. It's not going to take too long to realize what in the hell are we doing here on the north side of this school. So all I can tell you, we're about to blow a big one if we go with this as it's being proposed. So for what it's worth, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Martino?
Hi, Tony Martino, 374 Highland Street. I want to talk about the generators. As you know, I was on CIC as the staff liaison for many years, and I'm happy to see this move forward. But I want to talk about the one at the ambulance and the nature center. Last year I put in a generator at my house, and the company rep that came out that did the specs, I asked him if he did commercial ones too, and he said yes. So I mentioned to him about the one at the ambulance and the nature center, and I asked if there was a way the generator could be put in to handle 2 buildings, and he said yes. He says it's definitely cheaper. When we spec it, we can put 2 separate transfer switches in it, so if only one building goes out, it goes on just to take care of the one, it doesn't affect the other. And your maintenance costs would go down too annually, because you wouldn't have to maintain 2 separate generators. It'll only be one you're changing filters on or whatever. So when you go out on this, I suggest you look at 1 versus 2 to handle both buildings, and we can save money not just on the purchase, but on annual maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. Mr. Rue?
Good evening again, George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. Just a couple of questions. Is the manager's report on the ponds, is that available in writing?
Yeah.
I can get that.
Sure.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, I had 1 or 2 other items here they mentioned these other projects that came up. They've been on the list for a long time, but no number was attached to them. I think if you want to take a look at how long Cloverdale Circle's been on the list, it's been one hell of a lot longer than anything else that's in town, is my judgment. It goes back to Malone and McBroom, when I happened to be the chairman of the Flood Encroachment Control Board. And the big mistake I made at that time, I didn't exercise maybe some of the influence that the chair might have had to get that project done at that time, because I just said to myself, nobody's going to nail George Rue for being unethical and looking out to cover his own rear end by doing that project, so it's never got done. So, the priorities, they shift. And one of the concerns on the Capital and Investment Committee, I have a feeling that every time a new committee comes in, they toss all the balls up in the air and other stuff starts showing up. Other things, I looked at some of those sites of the three here, and it's interesting. One of them is right down here by the grass farm, and La Cava lives on Chester, the street on the backside. And a lot of the problem seems to have comes from what I think may well been the grass farm. I'm not too sure about that, okay? The other thing, I must apologize that you did not get the email, because the emails included some photographs and a little bit of additional history, and also we talked a lot about trees and some stuff about trees falling, and somebody mentioned Sally Katz was going to go out with her crew and cut down some trees, because we've had a couple of deaths, I believe, in Connecticut, or at least in parts of the country, where major trees have come down, and there's one that's hanging over there that's pretty flimsy at this point. The design is in place, the permits, the dredge plan, et cetera, but it's in out years. What out year? Somebody else asked, when's something going to happen? When's something going to happen on that pond? To me, it's just mind-boggling. I mean, we can spend tons of money. We're getting a quote somewhere less than $100,000. I've been up here in front of this council. That's not the only thing I've commented on. But it has influenced a lot of what I say. Because when you see government not able to do what it looks to me like a relatively little project for reasons that They can't make it happen for reasons that are very difficult to understand. It doesn't make for a lot of confidence on the part of the voters, me included, especially on this particular issue. I will try to fill in I'll try to get those pictures to you. I'm gonna see if I can work it out with Ray Ann. I'll try sending her what I did. I would have swore I took all the corrected email addresses out of the book. I differentiated between staff and elected officials. I don't know where it goes. Is there any chance that it got lost in spam somewhere?
I didn't see.
Because I forwarded it to the two reporters here, and they said, oh yeah, I got him. I forwarded it to myself, I got it. I don't know why it wouldn't come to you.
Is it the Lyme disease?
No, that's
That
not
came
the one.
tonight.
I'm talking about the one I sent early last week. There were 4 photographs on it of the area in its current state, and I had some commentary on how long this has been a problem, and a few other comments.
We got the Lyme disease one.
Yeah,
well,
that
the
came
Lyme disease
tonight.
I just forwarded tonight.
That came tonight.
I thought it was interesting.
We'd have to ask
Yeah, if it's
Tom
too big.
to look for it.
Oh, in other words, oh.
Too many
So
pictures?
you have to send them one at a time, and they would go through.
You can't handle 4 pictures? How come my simple computer at home? I mean, I don't know why mine worked. That could very well be the reason. So what happens? It automatically rejects it? It rejects the language also? I mean, the words that I say? The whole thing goes away. So with all of the bazillions of dollars we got, you can't handle 4 pictures. Now, that doesn't make for a lot of confidence in me, on my part. I mean, everybody's got all these fancy things over here. You can't even get a simple email with 4 pictures. And I'm thinking it's all my problem. Oh, well, I'll work with Ray Ann. I'll make sure she gets them. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening. Ladies and gentlemen.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak?
Just 6:30 Monday?
6:30 for the joint meeting, yes, it'll be in the media center.
At the high school.
At the high school. 6:30 Monday.
A reminder for the meeting with the building committee and the Board of Education on the 26th.
And we'll send out some.
Can we just, since Christine is here and Laurel, or maybe the town manager, Mr. Miller keeps talking about that parking lot, and I thought the issue with the parking lot is it's technically not on the high school grounds,
Right.
and there's reimbursement issues. Can somebody straighten that out?
We, from the original round of comments on that particular element, the infrastructure committee actually took a look at that because it's off-site. And reimbursement wouldn't apply to that project if it was off-site. So the infrastructure committee took a look, and David can talk about this, is, it's probably something to do, but it's gonna be a town project, not part of the high school renovation project, because it's a tremendous amount of money and it's off-site.
Yeah, Jeff, I think his comment was actually, if we save 600,000 to $1 million, that's reimbursable even 50%. Doing it off-site on our own might actually be cheaper than the 500,000 it would cost us out of pocket for bringing in the fill and doing that. I think that was really his point, that we should analyze that.
Did you put together a number? Did you throw a number on way back when we first talked about that?
We actually.
It was like $1 million deal or something.
Right, for the, we did a cost estimate, it was close to $1 million to actually put Follies Brook through together as a road with sidewalks and parking. And then there were obviously wetland issues, floodplain issues. We did solicit from our on-call engineers proposals to study that work, and I think the proposals ranged from like $6,000 to like $25,000 or $26,000 from the 3 firms to actually do a detailed study and cost estimate, something that we could use for capital improvements if we so choose.
Yes, but I don't believe we could fund, because it's not on the property, we can't fund that with a bond holder, right? We
That's-
have to go ourselves and
Right.
get $1 million or something.
Right.
That's
And you gotta do it now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dredge that up again, because that was something that I supported, but, I mean, this was something that could have been addressed before, but just, the building committee felt that they were satisfied with the parking arrangements they had. And, because we could have moved the line, the property line, because we own it, to put it into the site for the town. But, at this point, it doesn't really matter, but.
I think that'd be a project, maybe, you're right, maybe move the property.
And those were a little farther away, too, so that was another issue, but,
It is farther away.
yeah.
But the other thing of note, Mr. Miller mentioned about the fill being brought in, this project has a net surplus of fill on site. So all of the fill that will be used to raise that softball field is coming from on the site itself. either from trenching or from the building addition areas, things like that. So there's no import of fill to the site.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Jeff, Monday at 6:30 at that.
Okay.